I didn't find the post right away. Someone sent it to me. A former coworker, of all people. The kind who only reaches out when something's burning. No, hey, how you been? No preamble. Just a screenshot and one line. Thought you should see this. There it was, my daughter. Arms up in the air, fake tan glowing under some California sun, mouth wide open like she'd just been freed from a cult. The caption? Free from dad red heart sparkles. No context. No filter on the malice, either. Just a public execution, held on a beach, under a blue sky. I stared at it for longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood it perfectly. That wasn't a throwaway line. That was an invitation. A green light for people to pile on. Say what they really thought about me. And they did. Plenty of likes, some, you go girl, comments. One especially bitter gem from a guy named Travis. Dads like that don't get it until it's too late. But the one that gutted me? The little red heart from her mother. My ex. The woman who still uses my last name when it suits her, but forgets I exist the moment it doesn't. Her click didn't cost her anything, just a twitch of her thumb, but it was louder than a megaphone. I didn't comment, didn't hit like, didn't text, didn't call, didn't even screenshot it. I just closed the app, set my phone face down on the porch table, and lit a cigarette I hadn't touched in 6 years. One of those stale ones you keep for emergencies. This counted. To the neighbor walking his dog, I probably looked relaxed, bare feet on the porch rail, smoke curling around my head, a man enjoying his evening breeze. But inside, something ancient was waking up. The part of me that had kept every receipt, every login, every copy of every agreement for 15 years while being called controlling. The part that remembered the name of the registrar in her college's financial office. The part that set up the Howarth family endowment and never once claimed credit. Because here's the thing, my daughter thought she pulled away from me. Independent, fierce, liberated from the boring man who still drove a Silverado and asked about tire pressure. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the financial oxygen in her life was coming through a tube with my name taped over. She was free? Then let her breathe on her own. And no, I wasn't angry. Not in the way they expected. No yelling. No long-winded emails or guilt-tripping voicemails. Just one very still moment of clarity, sitting on that porch with the last bitter drag of a cigarette that tasted like ash in memory. Listen, quick break. We set a goal to hit 10K subscribers. So tap subscribe if you're liking these wild stories of betrayal. Now let's get back to the madness. The world had turned, finally, and something had clicked back into place. A kind of silence I hadn't felt in years. Not peace, exactly, but precision. That cold awareness a surgeon has right before the first cut. Because this wasn't about a photo on a beach. This was about years. Years of being useful but unloved, present but unacknowledged. Paying for everything while being told I don't understand her journey. Fine. Let's make the journey real. I stood up, flicked the cigarette into the damp grass, and went back inside. By morning, I had the letter drafted. Not to her. To the people who actually matter when the bill comes due. And for the first time in a long while, I slept like a rock. The divorce wasn't loud. No flying plates, no screaming matches, no scorched earth custody war. Just a Tuesday mediation where everything was divided like bad leftovers. She got the house, the furniture, and full creative control over the narrative. I got my tools, the guest room in a rental, and the privilege of being financially supportive. But even back then, I knew how the game was played. You don't win by arguing louder. You win by staying useful in the shadows. And when my daughter chose to live with her mom full-time, I didn't fight it. I just nodded, paid the child support, and started planning. She was 10 when I first wrote the words Howarth Family Endowment on a napkin. Howarth was my mother's maiden name. Dead 20 years. No ties. No one to trace it back to me unless they dug through census records and obituary clippings, and no one would. Because who questions free money? By the time my daughter hit 17, the endowment was registered, tax-shielded, and fully operational. I had it set up through a modest nonprofit that handled anonymous educational donations. On paper, it looked like a family trust that had been dormant since the Eisenhower administration. The funds flowed like clockwork, semester after semester. She got into a well-ranked liberal arts college in Vermont, the kind where students drink matcha and protest things their grandparents built. When she got the financial aid letter, She called me with this sugar-coated grin in her voice. Good news, she said. Turns out I qualified for a legacy fund on Mom's side. Somehow we're thing. Never heard of them. But hey, free money. I was standing in a parking lot when I heard that. I remember because I was holding a box of HVAC fittings and my fingers cramped so hard I nearly dropped it. She laughed, thinking it was cosmic luck. I just told her, that's great, kid. Really proud of you. And I was. But I never corrected her. Not once. The next 4 years were a quiet spectator sport. I followed her college account from the endowment's donor dashboard. Watched her move from dorm to off-campus loft. Watched tuition payments go through on schedule while her public posts started sounding more and more like someone else's daughter. She spent spring break in Barcelona, tagged at #selfmade. Her summer internship in New York? Paid for out of pocket, supposedly, though the check for the apartment deposit had my fingerprints on it, laundered through Halworth. Every milestone brought new distance. Less, Dad, guess what? More, thanks, but I'm good. Less curiosity about my life, more subtle sneers about my manual labor lifestyle. She once told a cousin over brunch that I fix fridges and feelings, blue-collar therapy. I got that story secondhand. I never said a word. Because I wasn't investing in her affection, I was investing in the long game. And if she wanted to believe she was pulling herself up by invisible bootstraps I'd sewn, fine. Let her climb. But every post, every subtle dig, every smug joke at my expense, it wasn't just teenage rebellion. It was decay, entitlement in heels, a slow erosion of gratitude, masked as independence. And through it all, I never stopped paying. Tuition, meal plans, book stipends. The university's billing system made it simple. Halworth Family Endowment, standing order. I could have shut it down any time. But I waited. Not out of mercy, out of strategy, because she thought she'd risen above me. She didn't know I'd built the floor she was standing on. It was one of those forced family dinners. The kind people stage for appearances, like seasonal teeth cleanings or checking your smoke detector batteries. A table set for 3 in some overpriced restaurant that served steak like it was endangered and cocktails that came with smoke and a story. She'd picked the place. My daughter said it would be a good midpoint between campus and real life. Translation, somewhere she wouldn't be embarrassed to be seen with me. She arrived late, phone in hand, nails done like a sponsorship deal, with her mother trailing behind in heels too sharp for her age. I stood when they approached, old habits. Neither of them noticed. The hostess seated us in a booth too tight for elbows and too shallow for boundaries. I complimented her coat. My daughter gave a lukewarm thanks, like I was TSA and she'd cleared security. Her mother ordered wine before the menus hit the table. It was supposed to be a celebration. She'd just gotten an internship with some glossy magazine in Soho. Unpaid, of course, but prestigious. The kind of job where you do 3 people's work and get thanked with tote bags. She talked, and I listened, nodding at all the right beats, even though most of what she said sounded like someone else's voice. Jargon about media pivots, brand congruence, and narrative authority. She was 21 and already fluent in corporate nonsense. I asked her a simple question, what she actually did at the internship. She rolled her eyes and said, "You wouldn't get it, Dad. It's not like fixing pipes or whatever." I smiled, still cutting into my steak. Well, people appreciate pipes more when they burst. I imagine the same applies to deadlines. She laughed, but not at the joke. At me. Blue collar's cute, Dad. For the 80s. Her mom burst out laughing, like it was some inside joke they'd rehearsed. She swirled her wine and said something like, "He's still using a flip phone, sweetie. Be kind." I didn't flinch. Didn't drop my fork. Just paused for a second, tasted the blood in my mouth from biting my cheek, and went back to chewing. The waiter came, asked if everything was okay. My daughter said, "Just fine," while I stared at my glass of water and realized I didn't feel hungry anymore. The rest of the dinner played out like a bad movie with forced smiles and quiet insults. My daughter checked her phone between bites. Her mother brought up a real man she was seeing, Greg or Grant or whatever, who actually reads books. When the check came, my ex reached for her purse theatrically, then stopped halfway and said, "Oh wait, your treat, right?" I paid. Of course I did. When we stood up, I gave my daughter a hug. She gave me her shoulder. That was the last meal we ever had together. I walked out of that restaurant into a parking garage lit like a crime scene, sat in my truck, and gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding me in this world. Not from rage, no. Rage burns fast and fizzles. This wasn't rage. This was sediment. A slow, quiet shifting of something fundamental. That night, I didn't drink. Didn't scream. Just cleaned my garage. For 5 hours. Sorted screws, relabeled bins, rewound extension cords tighter than they needed to be. The radio played some 80s track, probably the one she had in mind when she mocked me, and I didn't skip it. Just let it loop while I stared at the blueprint cabinet I hadn't opened in years. Because something happened that night. Not a collapse, not a crack. Just a line being drawn in permanent ink. She had carved out her space and made it clear I wasn't welcome in it. So I started planning what it would look like when I stepped out of hers. The cursor blinked. That little vertical pulse, like a heartbeat waiting to die. I had the email open for 30 minutes before I typed a single word. Not because I was conflicted, but because I wanted the silence to stretch. Like holding your breath underwater, watching the light above ripple, knowing you could break the surface anytime, but choosing not to. The subject line was plain. Scholarship discontinuation request. I typed the words carefully. No fluff. No emotion. No story. Please discontinue scholarship disbursement effective immediately. Beneficiary. Her full name. Howarth Family Endowment. No explanation. No backstory. No signature flourish. I didn't reread it. Didn't even correct the missing period at the end. Just clicked send. It took exactly 2 seconds for the message to vanish from my outbox, but something far older and heavier dislodged in me. She didn't know. Not yet. But I did. I knew what happened when the money stopped moving. The tuition schedule was precise. Disbursements triggered the first Monday of the semester, meal plan activation tied to confirmation of payment, housing and library access synced to a paid invoice. It was all automated. Cold, bureaucratic clockwork. And in 2 weeks, that machine would choke. They'd email her a sterile notification. Probably something like, "Dear student, we regret to inform you," followed by a chunk of numbers she'd never seen before, broken down into meal fees, housing installments, course registration costs. A 4-digit storm wrapped in digital politeness. It would come out of nowhere. Like a power outage during finals week. She'd scramble. Maybe call the financial aid office. Ask about the Howarth Family Endowment. Probably hear the words, "The donor requested cessation. We have no further details." She'd dig. Try to find a phone number. An address. But there was no public trail. I designed it that way. Anonymous giving has its perks. There was a second email I almost wrote. A longer one. It sat in my drafts for 10 minutes. It started with, "You didn't become free. You became arrogant. That's different." I deleted it. Not because it was too harsh, but because it gave her something. Explanation is a currency. And she'd already overdrawn her account. Instead, I stood up, stretched my back, and walked out to the shed. In the dim yellow of the motion light, I found the envelope I'd sealed years ago. Labeled, just in case. Inside, notarized documents from the day the endowment was founded. Backup termination clauses. Disbursement logs. A flash drive with PDF statements. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was rebalancing. Because she didn't fall out of love with me. She rose into a version of herself that didn't see me anymore. And now, she'd get to learn what it felt like when someone who doesn't matter disappears from the balance sheet. Her world wouldn't explode immediately. No, this was better. This was a slow eclipse, where the light dims just a little at a time, until one day you look up and realize you're standing in the dark. It started small. That's the part she'd remember later. A declined meal swipe. She tried again, assuming the scanner had glitched. When it beeped red a second time, the kid behind her in line coughed, and she felt the heat crawl up her neck. She laughed awkwardly, like it was beneath her to care. "Ugh, campus tech," she muttered. Then she walked out of the dining hall without lunch. The next morning, her student portal locked her out of the online library system. An overdue digital journal she needed for her internship paper. She emailed IT support. They said it was a billing hold and referred her to student finance. That was when the thread finally started to unravel. She clicked into her university inbox. Subject line: urgent, tuition shortfall notice. The body of the email was worse. Cold. Bullet pointed. No warm greetings. No, hope you're well. Just numbers and a big red flag in bold. Outstanding balance: $21,438.75. She read it 3 times. The number didn't change. Scrolling down, her eyes caught on one sentence. Please be advised that your scholarship funding via the Howarth Family Endowment has been discontinued per donor request. Contact our office to arrange an updated payment plan or alternative sponsor. The word discontinued froze her. She opened her banking app. Her personal savings, $312. Her checking, $84. And a Venmo balance of $4.79 from splitting a mimosa brunch. Panic slipped in, quiet at first, like fog under a door. She called the bursar. Sat on hold for 16 minutes while a hold message looped about investing in your future. When someone finally picked up, she barely let them finish the greeting. I just got this email about the Howarth Endowment, she said. It's got to be a mistake. That scholarship's always been there. The woman on the other end had the tone of someone who's dealt with 100 panicked students a day. Let me pull up your file. Yes, I see it here. The donor terminated the arrangement 2 weeks ago. You should have been notified. I wasn't. Her voice cracked. Can it be reversed? I'm sorry. It's donor discretion. You can speak with financial aid about emergency options. Do you have a backup sponsor? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She didn't. She'd never needed one. The Howarth name had always just been there, like a dependable uncle who mailed birthday checks from Florida. She'd never thought to question it. In her mind, she was the exception, the self-made daughter of divorced parents who had somehow stumbled into generational luck. The Howarth Fund was just a windfall. Nothing to examine. Now it was gone. The woman offered a list of steps. FAFSA updates. Appeals. Late payment penalties. Each one sounded like a sledgehammer pounding a little harder into the walls she'd built around her reality. She didn't even hear the end of the call, just stared at her laptop screen, fingers numb. Later that day, her student housing keycard failed at the south entrance. She had to wait for another resident to let her in. They looked at her like she didn't belong. She laughed it off, said something about admin glitches. But that night, lying on her borrowed mattress in that overpriced off-campus unit, she checked her email again. No correction, no apology, no new funds, only a cold, growing silence. And it felt targeted, personal, like someone, somewhere, had finally stopped holding the rope. The phone rang once, then again. Blocked number. He almost let it go. His thumb hovered over the red button, but something, maybe instinct, maybe something colder, made him slide to answer. Hello. There was a pause. Then her voice, thinner than he remembered, raw around the edges. Did you have anything to do with the Howarth Fund? He didn't sigh, didn't flinch, just stared out at the porch light flickering against the wind chimes she'd once picked out as a teenager, back when she still liked the sound of home. Another breath from her side, this time shaky. I'm serious, Dad. It's gone. They said donor decision. And no one else even knows who that is. I don't understand. Was it you? He waited. For seconds. 5. Then said it the way you'd read a weather report. Flat. Dry. Absolute. You said you were free. I honor that. Silence. It wasn't the kind of silence you fill with more words. It was the kind that sits on your chest, that forces you to confront the echo of your own decisions. 7 full seconds passed. He counted them. Then quiet. Soft, but unmistakable. She was crying. Not the performative kind. Not the kind she used in high school when she wanted to drop a class or escape blame. This was smaller, leaking through cracks. He could hear her trying to swallow it back, to keep control, but it was too late. It wasn't just the money. It was that he hadn't fought her, hadn't lectured, hadn't even chased. He just agreed. She hadn't expected that. Because deep down, she knew what she'd done. Not just the beach post, not just the casual mockery, but years of slow exile, brick by brick, thinking the walls she built to keep him out wouldn't come with consequences. She tried to erase him publicly, and he had responded by vanishing privately. She must have thought cutting him off would sting, that it would provoke something, an apology, a begging, a reminder of his usefulness. Instead, she found out what it feels like when someone steps back, far enough that even shouting won't bring them forward again. "Dad," she whispered, but he didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing else to say. That was the lesson. She hung up. He sat there another hour, staring into the dark, while the porch light blinked on and off behind him. Somewhere inside the house, a clock ticked, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like the one who had to explain himself. The next call came less than 12 hours later. Different voice. Same poison. His ex's number lit up the screen just as he was oiling the hinge on the back gate. He let it ring 3 times before answering, not because he needed time, but because he wanted her to think he considered not picking up at all. "What the hell did you do?" she spat before he could say a word. He didn't respond. He just kept tightening the hinge until the squeak finally died. "She's devastated," she continued. "She's sobbing, can't eat, hasn't slept. You sabotaged her future. Our daughter's future. Still nothing from him. You know what she's worked for. You know what this internship means. And you, God, you're so vindictive, you'd take that from her? Because your ego's bruised." He flipped the wrench around and began the second hinge. "I mean it. You need to fix this," she hissed. "You're still her father, for Christ's sake. You don't just get to disappear when it's convenient." It was then, and only then, that he spoke. "You liked the post." 4 words. No heat, no venom. Just a mirror held up in daylight. Silence. Not a sound on the line. He waited. Not because he thought she'd apologize, she never had when it mattered, but because he knew that silence was the sound of her replaying it in her head. Realizing she'd clicked at heart without thinking, maybe with a smug grin. That she'd chosen the petty high five over any kind of parental alliance. And now here they were. She didn't respond. Not, "I didn't mean it." Not, "It was just a joke." Nothing. Then the call cut off. Not a clean goodbye. Just gone. He didn't sigh. Just slipped the wrench back into the toolbox, clicked it shut, and sat on the steps of the deck with a bottle of water and a mind finally at peace with its own silence. Later that night, just past 11 p.m., he got a voicemail. His daughter. Her voice was softer now. No panic, no edge. Just small. "Hey, Dad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." There was a pause. You could hear her swallow. She almost said more. He could feel it. But she didn't. Click. He didn't delete the message. Didn't play it again either. He just let it sit there. A fragile offering. Because regret, when it finally comes, doesn't arrive with flowers or explanations. It shows up late, wearing yesterday's clothes, eyes red, unsure if it's still allowed in the room. He didn't call back. Not because he didn't care, but because she needed to learn something her mother never did. Some bridges don't burn with fire. Some just fall quietly when the last nail is pulled. It didn't take long. College campuses are small towns with better Wi-Fi. Every whisper travels like wildfire, especially when the gossip is too rich to ignore. At first, it was side glances. Her roommates paused conversations when she walked into the kitchen. A girl from her ethics seminar, yes, ethics, started a sentence with, "So, I heard," before trailing off into a smirk. Then came the questions. Light on the surface, laced with knives underneath. "Wait, I thought your dad wasn't in the picture? You said you were paying for everything yourself, right? Didn't you post that thing about being free?" She brushed them off, claimed misunderstanding, joked about how funding is complicated and how she doesn't really know where some of it comes from. But it was too late. Once suspicion enters a room, it doesn't leave quietly. They started doing the math. Out-of-state tuition, off-campus rent, designer tote bags, monthly nail appointments, weekend trips to DC for networking. Her entire aesthetic, the curated independence, the feminism for Instagram energy, the soft launch of her personal brand, all of it now reeked of something she'd spent years mocking. Daddy's money. The label stuck fast. And the worst part? It wasn't even about the money. It was about the lie. The theater of self-made success, shattered by the discovery that she'd been gliding on a golden runway her invisible father had laid for her brick by brick. One guy, some wannabe campus podcaster, referred to her as How Earth Girl during an episode about fake hustle culture. She wasn't named, but everyone knew. The next day in class, one of her professors pulled her aside. "I heard what happened," he said gently, like someone delivering bad news to a patient who didn't know the diagnosis yet. You might want to start applying for aid. Some of the emergency deadlines are coming up. She nodded once and left before the session ended. On the walk back to her apartment, she felt it fully for the first time. The collapse. Not just financial, but personal. The scaffolding she'd built out of smugness and detachment crumbled under her feet. Every arrogant eye roll, every joke at her father's expense, every strategic omission from her public narrative, it all came back with receipts. And the irony? They didn't even care that she had help. Everyone gets help. It was that she pretended not to. That she wore struggle like an accessory while someone else carried the weight. Now the weight was hers. She got home, shut the blinds, and lay on the couch staring at the ceiling while her phone buzzed with 24 unread group chats. She didn't open them. In her inbox, the FAFSA page blinked in an open tab, and on her nightstand, the note from the financial aid office sat unopened. It was only just beginning. It arrived in a plain envelope. No stamps, no return address, no university seal. Just her name, written in blocky, deliberate handwriting, the kind she hadn't seen since fourth-grade permission slips and field trip forms. The kind her father used when he didn't want anyone to misread what mattered. She found it wedged in her mailbox between an overdue rent notice and a coupon flyer for frozen yogurt. For a second, she thought it might be a prank, another cruel joke from someone on campus who'd caught wind of her unraveling story. But when she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't typed. It wasn't long. It wasn't bitter. It was a scalpel. You were never cut off. You cut me out. I just adjusted to your decision. No greeting. No dear. Just the statement, clean and precise. A surgical truth she couldn't dismiss. And then, at the very bottom, centered in the middle of the page, one final line. Respect is not an inheritance. It's earned, and it's noticed when it's gone. Her hand trembled. She set the letter on the kitchen counter, then picked it up again. Read it once more. Then again. 10 times. Maybe more. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just stood there, eyes glazed over, the refrigerator humming in the background like white noise in a courtroom. Because it wasn't angry. That's what made it worse. It wasn't the furious lashing out of someone betrayed. It wasn't the emotional plea of a desperate parent. It was a final, unflinching boundary drawn by someone who had been made small for too long and decided to disappear on purpose. She'd told people he was out of the picture. Now he really was. But not with drama. With dignity. The kind she hadn't understood until the floor gave way. The weight of the letter wasn't in the paper. It was in the mirror it held up. She remembered every moment she could have reached out. Every birthday where she sent a one-word text. Every holiday where she let her mother speak for both of them. Every subtle lie dressed as empowerment. And she saw it now for what it was, cowardice. The performative independence of someone who'd never tested real gravity. She folded the letter once, neatly, tucked it into the drawer beside the mismatched silverware and dried out pens. Not out of disrespect, but because she knew she wasn't done with it. Not yet. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not from guilt. Guilt is noisy, reactive, easy to sob through. This was different. This was stillness. A stillness she'd never felt from him. Not even when he was paying, smiling, nodding through the barbed jokes and backhanded compliments. This was the moment she realized he hadn't just disappeared. He had stopped giving her reasons to pretend he hadn't mattered. And that was something she couldn't ignore anymore. It was just past midnight. He was up late, not restless, not anxious. Just awake. Sitting in the garage with an old ball game playing on a dusty radio, polishing a set of screwdrivers he hadn't used in years. It was something to do with his hands. Something that didn't require forgiveness or performance. Just friction and focus. The phone buzzed beside him. Her name. He stared at the screen for a full ring. Then two. Third ring. He picked up. Static. Muffled noise. Then a stranger's voice, hesitant and uncertain. Sir, I'm sorry to call this late. I'm, a friend of your daughter's. She asked me to call you. She's not okay. He didn't respond. Just listened. The boy, young, probably one of those theater major types she used to date for clout, fumbled something else. She's been crying. For hours. She won't eat. Won't talk to anyone. I don't know what to do. She just gave me her phone and said, call him. He didn't thank him. Didn't ask why this call hadn't come sooner. Instead, he waited. There was a shuffle. A handoff. A quiet sniffle. Then her voice, small and ragged. Dad. That word. Not father. Not, hey. Just Dad. Like she remembered how it used to feel in her mouth before pride got in the way. I miss you. He closed his eyes. Let the words sink in. Not like a warm bath. No, this was colder. Truer. Like stepping barefoot onto concrete after a long walk through fire. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Let her sit in that silence. Not as punishment, but as gravity. So she'd know the weight of what it meant to lose something real. Then, in a voice more steel than sorrow, he said, I'm not gone. I'm just done being invisible. There was a sharp breath on the other end. Not surprise. Recognition. She whispered, Can we talk? He looked around his garage, the tools, the oil-stained rags, the coffee mug he still used from her middle school art fair. Then back at the phone. And this time, he didn't hang up. He didn't make it easy. But he made it possible. Not because she deserved it, but because he wasn't the one who needed to prove he still cared. He had always cared. She was the one who finally realized it. And sometimes, the loudest kind of forgiveness doesn't come with declarations or hugs or perfect endings. Sometimes it sounds like silence breaking, and a man finally choosing to answer. The champagne hadn't even fizzled flat when she said it. You're the bank. I'm the beauty. It hit like a sucker punch in a quiet room, followed by this ripple of laughter from the polished, Botoxed crowd. Friends, neighbors, her yoga buddies, his former business partner, who gave him the look, that tiny wince like, damn, man, you just got publicly neutered. She didn't stop there. Lifted her glass a little higher, still smiling for the phones pointed her way. And he loves it, she added, with that little smirk she always reserved for when she thought she was clever. Don't you, babe? He raised his glass. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just looked her straight in the eye for half a second too long. That was enough. The rest of the evening was a blur of hollow toasts and too sweet desserts. She flitted around in a backless dress he paid for, in a house he designed, with guests who only knew her side of the story. The curated version. The one where he was a harmless old workaholic with too many spreadsheets and not enough passion. He left early. Didn't say goodbye. Just slipped away while she was getting complimented on her skincare routine. She probably didn't even notice. At home, he hung up his coat, loosened the tie she'd picked out for him, and stood silently in his office, a room she never entered unless she wanted to freshen it up. He moved toward the bookshelf, not to read, but to push aside an old framed photo from their Maui trip. Behind it, a hidden magnetic latch popped open a recessed compartment in the wall. Inside, a small steel key. Cold. Heavy. He hadn't used it in years. He crossed to his desk, slid open the bottom drawer, and inserted the key into the lock. It clicked with the weight of a decade. 3 black folders sat inside, pristine, labeled in his meticulous handwriting. 1. Post-nup. 2. Trust migration. 3. Liquidation strategy. He hadn't touched them since she'd signed that post-nuptial agreement 12 years ago. Back then, she called it silly, rolled her eyes but signed anyway, since his lawyer insisted, and everyone was doing prenups and postnups now. She was too busy posting vacation photos and Googling personal chefs to care. Listen, quick break. We set a goal to hit 10K subscribers. So tap subscribe if you're liking these wild stories of betrayal. Now let's get back to the madness. He pulled each folder out slowly, placing them on the desk like live grenades. The covers were still sharp at the corners, not a smudge in sight. He'd kept them untouched, not because he forgot them, but because he never forgot them. He sat down, opened the post-nup first. Her signature stared back at him, careless and bubbly like a teenager's autograph. She'd signed without reading half of it. Page 6 made him smile. The clause about sole ownership of all current and future business assets unless explicitly amended. Spoiler, he never amended anything. He turned to the second folder, Trust Migration. A full plan, written years ago during the company's first big merger. It had sat dormant, like a dormant volcano, waiting. A few pages had updated sticky notes. One read, Ask Elliot if sister still wants to serve as emergency trustee. He peeled it off. Time to find out. The third folder? That one felt like the final act. A playbook for strategic disconnection. Liquidation of shared assets, timing windows, blackout periods for transactional visibility. The details were cold, precise, and beautiful. The kind of thing only a man who had planned a quiet exit for a long time could write. He wasn't angry. He wasn't hurt. He was clear. He closed the folders one by one, stacked them, and opened his laptop. In his inbox sat an unread message from Elliot, his trust attorney, with the subject line, "Still ready when you are." He clicked reply, typed one sentence, "Let's begin," and hit send. Year 2 of their marriage, they still lived in a modest colonial with squeaky floors and a second-hand grill that never lit right. She was still sweet back then, sweet enough to sign whatever his lawyer slid across the table. No protest, no reading. Just a breezy, "Of course, babe. You're the money guy. I trust you." The post-nup was her idea. Technically, at least, that's how she remembered it. In truth, it came from Elliot, his attorney, who called her highly brand-conscious and potentially high-maintenance long-term. The language was gentle, neutral on paper. But the structure? Brutal, if you knew what to look for. She didn't. Clause by clause, it boxed her out. No claims to future assets unless directly titled in her name. No interest in trusts, companies, or royalties without a signed amendment. In the event of separation, clothes, car, leased, jewelry, itemized, and a lump sum calculated from her 5-year average household contribution. He remembered her giggling at that part. "What am I, an intern?" He kept it all. Not just the post-nup, but the amendments she never asked for. The deeds she never noticed didn't include her name. The businesses she Instagrammed herself inside, tagged #CEO wife, while sipping champagne at launch parties, without knowing she had zero stake in any of it. He created a private system, back when the company first hit $10 million in revenue. For every asset, every account, he kept dual copies, one for operations, one for extraction. It was obsessive. It was clinical. It was necessary. Take the house, for example. She'd called it our forever home. Took photos of the backsplash for Pinterest, argued with the contractor about pendant lighting. She even gave a tour to her friends and made jokes about what kind of drapes she would pick for the library. But the deed? Filed under a family trust. Beneficiaries? His nieces. Occupant rights? Revocable at will. She never saw it. Same with the lake house. She referred to it as her sanctuary. Posted bikini shots with captions like "Self-care is key, ladies face blowing kiss," while sipping mojitos in a place she legally had zero claim to. The mortgage was under an LLC named after a fake design consultancy. She once asked him, offhand, "Wait, who pays the taxes on the lake house again?" He smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's handled." And she never brought it up again. She didn't know the financial shell she floated inside was hollow by design. That the joint account was a weekly transfer into a debit card with spending limits. That her corporate card was an authorized user profile he could shut down with 2 taps. That her car, an obnoxious European import she once called "my baby," was registered to a fleet services corp in Nevada. He kept the receipts. Not metaphorical ones, actual receipts. Categorized. Stapled. Filed in rows of manila folders so perfect, you could measure his contempt in millimeters. She thought he was boring, dull, predictable. But predictable men make the best predators. She thought she was safe because he never raised his voice. Never stormed out. Never made a scene. But the truth was, he never needed to. Because by the time someone like her realizes she's not in control, the paperwork has already done its job. And now, those agreements she forgot, those inked, scanned, and triple certified pages, weren't just legal documents. They were loaded weapons. And she had signed every single one. He didn't rush. Men like him don't sprint toward revenge, they engineer it. By 9 a.m. the next morning, he was on a secure line with Elliot Rains, a former college roommate turned trust attorney with a Rolodex that could flip a senator's fortune inside out without leaving fingerprints. "I want everything in motion by next Thursday," he said. Elliot didn't ask questions, just cleared his throat and replied, "Do you want to tell me why?" "Nope," he said. "I just want it clean." And clean it was. That afternoon, the plan began unfolding like an orchestral score written for destruction. Every asset, every point of leverage, began shifting under her nose, and she had no idea. He moved with the precision of a man who had rehearsed this moment in his head 1,000 times. The house? Redeeded that same day. filed into the Blue Fern Trust under a legal instrument designed years earlier to protect family generational assets. The title now read Temporary Trustee, Sarah Whitlock. His sister, estranged from his wife for years after a nasty Thanksgiving argument about Botox and inheritance. Sarah always said Dina was the kind of beautiful that curdles. Now, Sarah was the technical gatekeeper to the house his wife thought was hers. Her car? Transferred. The Nevada-registered LLC that technically owned it, Juniper Ridge Consulting, filed a reassignment of usage rights. If she ever called the police and tried to claim theft, the answer would be simple: you don't legally own the vehicle. Here's the paperwork. Here's the lease. And then the shrug. Bureaucracy makes the best accomplice. Her brand card? Disabled. Her black Amex? Recalled. The account she'd used for years, Nordstrom, Bergdorf, Net-a-Porter, returned errors when she tapped purchase. She thought it was a fraud alert. Maybe a systems glitch. She had no idea it was him, tapping confirmations over eggs and coffee while nodding like nothing was wrong. He sat across from her at breakfast, watching her scroll through her phone in her usual morning trance. She grumbled about influencers faking pregnancies and a new gut health protocol she wanted to try. He stirred his coffee, added a bit of cinnamon like always, and smiled as his watch buzzed. Confirmation. Wire to holding account, complete. Trustee update confirmed. Merchant access, revoked. She didn't notice, because she never asked how anything worked, just that it did. Later that day, she swanned off to her regular Tuesday spa ritual. She always added an overpriced extra, seaweed wraps, gold leaf facials, a cellular detox that sounded like something invented in a Gwyneth Paltrow fever dream. She flashed her card. Declined. Try again, she said, already annoyed. Declined. Again. The receptionist gave that polite, strained smile that said, "We've seen this before, and you're not the first rich-looking woman bluffing through bounced plastic." She stepped outside, furious. Called him. Twice. No answer. She texted. "Something's wrong with the account again. I'm not amused." He saw it. Didn't reply. He sat in his office, reviewing the newly layered LLCs now shielding his real estate holdings. They looked like a Russian nesting doll, one company owned by another, filed in separate states, each linked by deliberately obscure legal names: Gravel Pines LLC, Talbot Firm, Merlin Ridge Holdings. All real. All legal. All airtight. If she ever tried to sue, she'd be chasing ghosts. And still, he didn't feel the need to gloat. No smug satisfaction. Just relief. Not because she was losing access. Because he was gaining something he hadn't had in years. Silence. Control. A future not built on the shaky scaffolding of forced smiles and silent humiliations. By the time she sat in the car texting a girlfriend about whatever glitch happened, he was 10 moves deeper. The funding line for her influencer brand had already been frozen. Vendor invoices canceled. Ownership structure voided. The chessboard had been flipped politely, efficiently, and with not a single piece out of place. And she hadn't even realized the game had started. He used to believe love meant patience. Or maybe he just confused silence for strength. At first, it was small things, harmless on the surface. A backhanded compliment here, a snide remark when she thought he wasn't really listening. "She's just proud," he used to say. "She comes from a different world." Doesn't mean anything. But deep down, he knew better. It wasn't the joke at the anniversary dinner that broke something. That was just the final, public echo of a pattern he'd spent years pretending didn't matter. It was the way she said things. Not what she said, how. With that tone. Like money made him tolerable. Like if he stopped producing, stopped achieving, stopped providing, she'd peel off like a fake nail. She used to cut him off mid-sentence when they were out with friends. Talk over him like a child trying to impress substitute teachers. Always ready with a sarcastic jab. If he mentioned a new investment, she'd roll her eyes and say, "There goes Mr. Monopoly again." At dinner parties, when someone complimented the house, she'd lean in and purr, "Well, I picked everything. He just signs the checks." Her friends laughed. He didn't. But he smiled anyway. Like a good husband. Like a good bank. She once told him, half drunk after a charity event, "You know why I married you? You're the safe option. You weren't risky. That's what I needed back then." Back then. The implication sat there between them like a clod in the heart. She stopped asking what he was working on. She stopped pretending to be curious. And that's when he started keeping receipts. Literal ones. Every shared expense she assumed he paid blindfolded, he filed it. Copies of every invoice, every personal luxury charge, every business dinner that was actually a night out with her influencer friends. Her name wasn't on a single credit agreement, but he logged each transaction with her initials in the margin. When she told him she'd handle the florist for her mother's birthday and then forgot to pay the invoice, he covered it, but kept the statement. When she took a trip to Miami and told him she was networking for her brand, he paid the hotel fee directly, but archived the security deposit report. She'd ordered champagne and room service for two, yet traveled alone. He noticed. Didn't ask. Just printed the bill, folded it cleanly, and slid it into a black binder labeled discretionary spending, D. He built a whole filing cabinet around her ignorance. One drawer was solely for purchases over $1,000. Another, social media screenshots with timestamps. Public photos that contradicted private alibis. The handbag she said she returned featured in her friend's tagged post 3 days later. But the most damning? The whiteboard in his private office, tucked behind a sliding bookshelf, like a magician's trick. On it, timelines, cross-reference dates, brand partnership launches, spikes in spending, a gap between her claimed retreat and the luxury hotel reservation under a different surname. She didn't even bother covering her tracks, because she didn't think she needed to, because she thought he would never leave. That quiet men stay quiet forever. That comfort equals control. But men like him? They don't explode. They erode. Silently. Methodically. Until one day, the foundation cracks and the house collapses. She thought she held all the cards. But she never once asked where the deck came from, or who was keeping score. And by the time she realized he'd been playing a different game entirely, he already had the receipts to prove it. Saturday morning. Bright sun, mild wind, and the exact kind of small-town calm she liked to ruin with performative luxury. She'd driven into town in her white SUV, the one she always referred to as my rolling office, which mostly meant it had 2 phone chargers and a pair of overpriced sunglasses in the cup holder. She stopped at Ashton's, an upscale boutique that thrived off divorcees and inherited guilt money. Her eye caught a gold necklace on a velvet stand. Not her usual style. This one was subtle, quiet elegance. Probably why she liked it. It made her feel tasteful. She snapped a photo for her story, manifested, Queen Sparkles. She tapped her card. Declined. Huh. Must be a glitch. The girl behind the counter gave the standard polite pause. Would you like me to try again? Of course. Her tone carried the weight of someone unaccustomed to the word no. Declined again. Her mouth twitched. This time, the clerk said nothing. Just folded her hands. There were rules about how many times you could try. She stepped outside and dialed him immediately. No hello. Hey, I'm at Ashton's. My card's not working. He didn't look up from the document on his screen. He was reviewing the latest beneficiary swap on the Talbot Ridge property, now fully restructured into a holding account his wife didn't even know existed. Bank must have flagged it. I'll check, he said. Smooth. Warm. Almost bored. She paused, as if weighing whether to press. Well, can you just fix it? Sure. He could hear the insecurity in her silence. The silence of someone who'd never had to question access. He already knew the card had been canceled the night before, along with the other 2 she didn't know were being monitored under merchant profiling. In fact, the accounts themselves had been quietly migrated to a dormant shell with no active draw permissions. On paper, her card technically still existed, but its spine had been snapped in half. He heard her breathing shift. That slight delay where ego meets reality. But she didn't press. Not yet. Because in her world, nothing was permanent. Banks had glitches. Systems crashed. She'd had that card declined once at a hotel in Cabo, only to find out the resort's network had dropped mid-transaction. This would be the same thing. It had to be, right? She went home early, her mood fouled but reparable. That's the thing about people like her. They live in bubbles of casual assumptions. She assumed someone he would fix it by Monday. That she'd wake up, tap the card, and the world would make sense again. Instead, he woke up Sunday morning, signed into the trust dashboard, and watched as the last co-signed liquid account was dissolved into long-term holdings. Her name was never on the title, never even on the contingency statements. Every penny was moved through chain-owned subholdings so boring no Instagram caption could survive them. Her boutique tantrum had been the first real tremor. Small, contained, but the earth had shifted. He filed the final confirmation email under a folder titled Stage 2 Complete. And then he shut the laptop, walked to the kitchen, and poured himself a black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Just bitter enough to match the taste of vindication settling into his chest. He didn't gloat, didn't feel adrenaline, just a cold, focused calm. She thought the card decline was the glitch, but in reality, it was the signal. The first crack in a facade she thought was indestructible, and he was already holding the hammer. Brunch was her battlefield now. No longer a meal, more like a curated performance with frittatas and filtered lenses. She'd rented out the terrace at Willow and Vine, the kind of place with lavender sprigs in the water pitchers and waitstaff trained to say locally sourced, like it meant salvation. Her influencer brand, some nebulous hybrid of lifestyle coaching, skincare serums, and euphemistic empowerment slogans, was finally launching its spring moment. There were photographers, a local food blogger, even one of those TikTok finance girls pretending to be interested in sustainability. And him? He was seated exactly where she wanted him, 3 chairs down, silent, dutiful, expensive. He played the part. She wore cream. Always cream at media events, flattering, photogenic, and delicate enough to scream, "I don't do my own laundry." He wore slate. Understated. Power disguised as neutrality. The cameras loved her. She gave them practiced joy, that lean-forward laugh pose she'd perfected over years of pretending to like people who complimented her just a beat too late. Then came the moment. She raised her mimosa, locked eyes with a journalist from some vapid online magazine, and smirked. "Behind every pretty girl is a man with deep pockets," she said, nudging toward him like he was some kind of antique vase she rented for ambience. The table erupted. Laughter, nods, even a few envious giggles. One influencer whispered, "Goals." He reached for his glass, lifted it calmly, and tapped hers with a soft clink. Then kissed her hand. The moment passed like a breeze. An hour later, he was gone. No goodbye. No announcement. Just an empty seat. She barely noticed. She was too busy posing with a mason jar full of lavender syrup and shouting instructions at her assistant about lighting angles. Across town, in an office that smelled like legal paper and filtered air, Elliot clicked the final authorization. The seed funding $320,000 wired through a venture vehicle owned solely by his holding company was now vapor. Not illegal. Just removed. The wiring instructions for dispersal had been rescinded. The merchant account? Deactivated. The business bank? Flagged for structural review. All clean. All traceable. And all final. An hour after that, her business partner, Marissa, a former college friend with delusions of Shark Tank, got a call. "Withdraw your name," he said. Marissa was confused. "Excuse me. The funding's gone." "And so is she." "Who's she?" Marissa asked, panicked. He replied with such dead calm that it chilled the air in her office. "No longer my concern." Click. At brunch, someone handed her a phone. Marissa, in full meltdown. "You didn't tell me he owned the whole cap table. There's nothing left. The brand's worthless." "Do you hear me? Worthless." Her smile faltered. Her hand shook. Someone tried to take a photo just then. She snapped at them to stop. The moment was crumbling. She called him. Voicemail. Texted. "What is going on? We had a deal. I'm in the middle of a live event." No reply. Meanwhile, he was 3 towns over, walking through a quiet forest trail, phone on silent, heartbeat steady. With each step, her empire of curated confidence unraveled behind him like a cheap extension caught in the wind. He'd given her the illusion of independence, the training wheels of capital, the shell of a company she could decorate and parade. But the moment she turned him into a punchline on camera, he decided she no longer got to ride the bike. She wanted to be the face of the brand. Now she could be its tombstone. Her brunch ended early, not because she chose to leave, but because nobody likes posing next to a corpse. She stormed in like a hurricane wearing heels. Slammed the door so hard one of the framed prints in the hallway tilted sideways. Makeup half melted, hair in panic spirals, rage vibrating off her skin like heat waves. What the hell is going on? He didn't answer right away. He moved like a man under no threat. Walked calmly to the bar cart. Picked up a square bottle of single malt. poured 2 fingers into a crystal glass, no ice. Stirred it lazily, just for show. She followed him into the room like a fire follows oxygen. My cards don't work. Marissa says the company's been gutted. And why is the trust login revoked? I can't even open the dashboard. He sipped the whiskey. Didn't flinch. She moved closer, grabbing at his arm now, genuinely rattled for the first time in years. Say something. He turned to her with a look that was neither cruel nor amused. Everything is still yours, he said. Your clothes. Your phone. Your stories. It took her a second to register that. Then she screamed and hurled the nearest thing she could find, his whiskey glass, across the room. It hit the wall, exploded into glittering pieces. The sound echoed down the hallway like punctuation at the end of a brutal chapter. He didn't react. He just nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. Then he walked across the room and picked up a single black folder from the table. He laid it in front of her. She didn't move, didn't even look at it. So he opened it for her. Page after page. Her signature. All of it real. All of it dated. All of it witnessed. The postnup. The LLCs. The amendments she never read but signed in a rush so she could make her Pilates class. The revocation of claim forms. The irrevocable trust deeds. The wire authorization clause she once joked about. Why does anyone need that many zeros? She did. She needed them now. And they were gone. He turned the final page for her. A one-sheet summary. Titled, Financial Rights Spousal Review. Below it, a list. Liquid assets, $0. Real property, $0. Equitable stake, $0. Business ownership, $0. Trust access, revoked. Marital entitlements, waived. Total net worth, $0. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was an obituary. She stared at it, blinked, looked again, tried to laugh. This is a joke. No, he said, calmly. It's a record. She flipped back through the pages, frantically now, like a child looking for hidden candy in an empty drawer. You can't do this. I didn't agree to. He tapped one line. Page 14. Her signature, right beneath a clause that read, the undersigned waives present and future interest in all property not specifically assigned to her name under Schedule B. Where's Schedule B? She hissed. There isn't one. The silence after that felt alive. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said the one thing manipulators say when the strings slip from their hands. You used me. He looked at her for a long, long moment. No, he said. You priced me. And now, she was holding the receipt. She didn't even sleep that night. Couldn't. She stayed on the floor of the library, pages fanned around her like a crime scene. Highlighter in one hand, old Chardonnay in the other, still trying to make sense of legal terms she once dismissed as boilerplate. She Googled every clause, cross-checked words like waiver and irrevocable and non-marital property. By 7 a.m., her eyes were bloodshot, her voice cracked from shouting at no one. She hadn't even changed out of her cashmere lounge set. She just threw on a trench coat, slid into heels, and drove straight to her lawyer's office. Gregory Moss. The man she once described as sharp enough to chew metal and spit diamonds. He was supposed to be her fixer, the one who'd make all this nonsense go away. He was already reading when she barged in, slamming the door behind her. I need this reversed. All of it. He ambushed me. Gregory looked up slowly, removed his glasses, said nothing. She dropped the folder on his desk like a bomb. I didn't understand what I was signing. He tricked me. He didn't reach for it. Just tapped the one already on his desk. The same folder. The same documents. But annotated in red ink. I've read it. She dropped into the leather chair. And he exhaled. Not dramatic, just tired. You signed it. I didn't know. You waived claims. There has to be something, an angle, a technicality, ill. There's nothing here, he said quietly, his voice losing its usual confidence. This wasn't sloppily done. This was surgical. She gripped the arms of the chair like it might flip. So what now? He gets everything? Gregory didn't respond. That was the answer. She stood, paced, then collapsed back into the chair like gravity had finally noticed her. I'll sue. He didn't laugh, but he almost did. You'll spend 6 figures to fight a man who already closed the accounts you're suing for. He doesn't owe you alimony. He doesn't owe you equity. You signed that away. She went quiet, mouth trembling. Then, softly, So what can you do? Gregory stared at her. It was the first time he'd ever looked at her like a client, not a donor, not a socialite, just a client with a dead case. Not unless he gives it back. She blinked. What? I can't undo this. Not without his consent. And he won't. He was right. She called. Left voicemails that started firm and ended sobbing. She texted. Can we talk? Please. You proved your point. I get it. Can we undo this? I'm sorry. Don't leave me like this. No reply. Meanwhile, he was sitting in a quiet cafe 3 towns over, nursing an espresso and reading a novel he hadn't touched in years. Phone on silent. Face calm. But his screen lit up each time she reached out. He read them. Every word. Every desperate apology. Every broken breadcrumb she tried to toss back toward the version of him she thought would come running. He didn't. She spiraled in private. At first, she kept up appearances, posted photos of her brunch success, captioned a selfie with power through the storm's sun behind small cloud, and filmed a story saying taking a quick break to focus on realignment. But the cracks showed. Friends stopped liking her posts. Invitations slowed. Her name was scrubbed from the brand's site within 48 hours. Then came the calls from credit lines she didn't realize were tied to his name. The stylist who wouldn't release her next season wardrobe until invoices were paid. The skincare line that paused collaboration. And her assistant? Quit. By the end of the week, the woman who once glided through boutiques like a ghost of old money was down to one working debit card, prepaid. And still, no answer. Because revenge doesn't need volume. Doesn't need blood. It just needs silence. And a woman who used to laugh too loud at someone else's expense. Now screaming into a void. He left while the house was still dark, the kind of quiet only men with nothing left to prove ever manage. No note. No suitcase by the door. Just gone. The car he drove off in wasn't even the one she associated with him. It was an old sedan from his early days, parked for years at his office lot. Reliable. Anonymous. Untraceable by habit. By the time sunlight crawled across the marble floors of their empty bedroom, his name was off every shared utility. The mail redirect had already kicked in. His phone? Deactivated. The number she knew by heart disconnected. And the lake house? The one she called our summer temple, the backdrop to countless filtered Instagram stories and faux deep sunrise captions? Now rented indefinitely to a nonprofit that ran grief retreats for widowed veterans. When the director called her to confirm cleaning preferences, she was speechless. Not because of the change, but because she wasn't listed on any documents. They didn't even need her permission. The Tesla? Donated. He transferred the title weeks earlier to a charity that provided transportation for women escaping domestic abuse. Ironic, maybe, but elegant. The garage was now just another echo chamber. Her world was vanishing in quiet increments. She still didn't understand it wasn't crumbling. It was being reorganized by someone who had studied her every move, every weak point, and drawn the blueprint of her unraveling. But the final touch? That took finesse. There was an annual gala for the city's elite. Black tie, white linen, custom everything. They'd gone together for 15 years. She always insisted on arriving late, just enough time to float into the spotlight when everyone else had finished mingling. She still showed up this year. Alone, of course, but still wearing the uniform of invincibility, a new dress, perfect blowout, fake confidence. What she didn't expect was the plaque. Near the entrance to the ballroom, elegantly etched onto a backlit wall beside the silent auction table. In gratitude for your financial support, Dina Whitlock. Below it, a dedication. Made possible by a generous donation from Ms. Whitlock, supporting vocational programs for women exiting toxic relationships. It was the exact kind of cause she pretended to support, but never actually funded. The room lit up with murmurs. Heads turned. She panicked, checked her purse. Her account had no record of a donation. That's because he made it. In her name. A $10,000 gesture with receipts mailed to her email. Unsubscribing wouldn't help. The tax documentation had already been filed. She stormed over to the organizer in a hissed whisper. There's been a mistake. I didn't authorize that. I didn't approve anything. The woman, confused but polite, smiled. Well, we received it under your name from your former foundation manager. Everything cleared. It was beautifully done. Are you not proud of it? That was the knife. Are you not proud of it? She left before dessert. And while she sat in her Uber home, too shaken to even scroll her phone, he was eating takeout from a paper box in his new apartment. Spartan. Quiet. Paid in full. He turned off the light, knowing there were no more cameras. No more props. And most importantly, no more applause for the woman who thought she'd married the bank. Because now, the vault was empty, and the banker had walked away with the keys. It happened in the last place you'd expect. Not a courtroom, not a lawyer's office. Not even in one of those hushed cafes where ex-spouses pretend to negotiate closure. It was aisle 7 of a garden center. He was there for new pots. Actual ceramic ones. For once, something that held life instead of ledgers. He was crouched down, reading the tag on a terracotta basin when he heard the unmistakable sound of heels hitting polished concrete. Fast, frantic, expensive. There you are. He didn't stand immediately. Just finished reading the label. Checked for chips. Placed the pot carefully in his cart. Then he looked up. She looked different. Not the kind of different that happens when someone's had a makeover. This was the kind of different that happens when someone has their ego shaved off in thin, painful layers. No makeup. Shoes scuffed. Her voice, desperate, but wrapped in the thinnest layer of pretend control. I want to talk. He stood fully now. Met her eyes. Steady. Unflinching. No performance. You said I was the bank, he said, voice low and even. And bank's close. That stunned her into silence. You could actually see her mouth opening and closing slightly, as if trying to conjure a rebuttal from a playbook that had finally expired. You can't just. He cut her off. Not cruelly. Just clean. No. I can. And I did. She blinked. He leaned in slightly, not to threaten. Just to finish the sentence he'd been holding on to for years. Next time you laugh, he said, make sure you're not standing on someone else's foundation. She flinched. Because she knew exactly what that meant. Everything she had stood on, every private jet, every spa, every curated brand and Instagram quote, had been built on his scaffolding. And now, there was nothing under her feet but air. She didn't speak. Just stood there, frozen. Face red. Jaw twitching. He nodded once. Not like a goodbye. Like a closing bell. Then he turned, card in hand, and walked away, calm, deliberate steps down the aisle lined with soil and seats. She didn't follow. Couldn't. And for the first time in his life with her, he didn't feel the urge to look back. Not even once. The first thing she did that night was correct the waiter when he said Mr. and Mrs. She laughed too loud and said, "Oh no, Jake's just tagging along." The second thing she did was introduce me not as her husband, but as someone she's been with a while. I was halfway through pouring the damn house Chardonnay when she said it. My hand froze mid-air, but I didn't say a word. Just kept pouring. The glass didn't stop filling until it spilled over onto the tablecloth. She didn't notice. Or pretended not to. Everyone laughed politely. The kind of fake, upper-floor laughter that lives and dies in the throats of people who all know they're being fake, but don't want to be the first to blink. I dabbed the spill with a napkin while she went on chatting like I wasn't even there. The rooftop was too clean. That's what I kept thinking. Everything chrome and candlelight, high-heeled shadows bouncing off the glass railings, little flames flickering in narrow glasses while people talked about launch metrics and brand voice. I didn't fit in, but I'd stopped trying years ago. When Monica turned to me and said, "Try not to embarrass me. Just smile and blend in." I gave her the same look I gave falling transformers back when I climbed poles for a living, quiet, tired, already knowing it was going to crash. But what really locked the night in my memory forever wasn't the cold shoulder or the fake laughs. It was the watch, a slim little thing on her wrist. Silver, minimal, definitely not the one I gave her for her birthday last year. The one with the engraved back that read, "To more time together." No, this one was sleek, modern, and had a tiny chip in the corner of the face, like someone had dropped it, maybe on a hotel bathroom floor. I noticed it because she kept checking it. Constantly. Not her phone, her watch. As if she was counting down to something. Or someone. When her coworker Jared showed up, a younger guy, strong jaw, very networky, she lit up like a lamp. They hugged just a little too long, and when he said, "Missed you in Chicago," she replied, "Only because you weren't there this time." My fork didn't even make it to my mouth. She didn't introduce me to him. She should have, but didn't. I sat there, listening to them talk about campaigns and after-parties, while I faded into the linen. I looked at the wine glass in front of me, the one I'd spilled earlier, and realized I'd been cleaning up messes I didn't even make for years. There's something razor-sharp about public disrespect. It slices quieter, bleeds slower. You don't realize how deep it's gone until you're halfway through pretending you're still okay. So I watched, not out of jealousy, out of strategy. I let the night wrap its noose. Every smirk, every dismissive glance, every, let's not pretend, comment she threw out while talking to her friends. I absorbed all of it like insulation before a fire. Then came dessert, and with it, the glass raising. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I'd ever sit beside her in public. The last time I'd nod and swallow my pride like dry bread. Because what she did next wasn't cold. It was war. She waited until the conversation had warmed up, when the wine had softened lips and blurred boundaries, when laughter was just loose enough that no one would think twice about cruelty dressed as a joke. They were talking about relationships, commitment, that overused corporate metaphor, are you all in? Or just taking up space at the table? Someone brought up marriage like it was a quarterly performance review. Monica leaned back in her chair, swirling her glass, eyes scanning the skyline like she was above it all. And then, with that polished PR smile she saves for crisis pressers, she said, "You know what?" Clink. She tapped her knife to the side of the glass. "Let's not pretend." The table quieted, just enough for her voice to cut through. "Jake," she turned to me, still smiling, still holding her glass in that actress pose. "Why don't you choose right now? Stay or go?" She laughed. Not with joy, no. This was a performance. A high-wire act on a rooftop stage, meant to shame without seeming bitter. "I'm tired of dragging you along like some dusty plus one." Her friend, the redhead with the frozen Botox smile, let out a snort laugh. Jared raised his eyebrows and looked at me like I'd just been pantsed at a wedding. Someone else mumbled, "Ouch." I looked at Monica. Really looked at her. How far gone she was. Not from me. Hell, she left me months ago in every way that mattered. But from herself. The woman I met wouldn't have dared weaponize her voice like that in front of strangers. But this version? She thrived on performance. She wanted applause. So I gave her silence. I picked up my napkin, folded it gently, laid it next to the barely touched creme brulee she insisted I order, so you don't look like a bore. I stood. Not fast. No flair. Just a man rising after being buried in plain sight. She blinked. There it was, that flicker of uncertainty. That "oh no, he's actually leaving" moment. But she covered it with another sip of wine, louder this time. "See," she said to no one in particular, "he can't even answer a simple question." I walked past her. Past Jared's smug little smirk. Past the redhead's twitching lips. I pressed the elevator button with the same calm I used when resetting a blown transformer. It dinged. I stepped in. I didn't look back. Because the most brutal thing you can do to someone who thrives on reaction is deny them one. She wanted a scene. She wanted to be the woman who broke a man in public. She didn't expect him to walk away before she could even take a bow. The doors shut with a soft mechanical sigh, sealing off the rooftop like the lid on a casket. My heart didn't race. My fists weren't clenched. I wasn't shaking with rage or grief like in the movies. I was just empty, clean, in a way I hadn't felt in decades. The elevator lights flickered faintly as we began the descent. Floor 15. Ding. It was the sound of a decision finally made. A decision that had been begging for daylight through gritted teeth and polite smiles for years. Floor 14. Ding. I didn't think about what I'd say to her later, or where I'd sleep that night. I didn't care if my jacket was still on the back of my chair. Hell, I didn't even care that I left my phone on the table next to my water glass. Let it buzz. Let her message. Let her explain. Floor 13. Ding. There was nothing left to explain. I wasn't walking out of my marriage in some sudden storm of emotion. I was walking out because staying had become a quiet act of self-betrayal. Because being in that chair next to her, letting her parade her cruelty like a designer handbag, had become a kind of death. And I had died enough already. Floor 12. Ding. The deeper the elevator dropped, the lighter my chest became. It felt like I was shedding skins, each ding peeling off a layer of shame. The way she corrected me in front of waiters. The subtle digs about my working-class habits. The way she used silence not for comfort, but as a blade when she didn't get her way. Floor 11. Ding. I remembered our anniversary 2 years ago when she told me she was too busy with client work for dinner and came home smelling like hotel soap. I let that slide. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself I was lucky to be with a younger woman. Told myself I needed to adapt. No more adapting. Floor 10. Ding. The air in the elevator was cool. Neutral. No candles. No condescension. Just metal walls and fluorescent light. But it was more honest than anything I'd felt upstairs. Floor 9. Ding. I leaned against the rail and closed my eyes for a second. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was mine. She wanted an answer. Stay or go. And now, each floor was the answer. Going. Gone. Ding. She played it like it was a skit, grinned at the table, did that dramatic sigh women in PR master by year 2, and waved her glass like she was toasting to independence. He'll be back, she said, lips curled in that sweet venomous smile she used on interns and waiters. Jake always does this dramatic brooding thing. He'll be on the porch by morning with that I was just tired routine. The redhead gave her a weak laugh, the kind people offer when they're not sure if they're witnessing confidence or collapse. Jared tried to steer the conversation back to work, something about brand pivots, but Monica kept drinking, kept leaning into her own delusion like it was a PR campaign she was too deep into to pull back from. She ordered another glass of wine, then a third, then joked that maybe she should put Jake on a leash, just to keep things interesting. The laugh didn't land that time. She stayed until the rooftop cleared out. It wasn't confidence. It was control. She didn't want anyone thinking she'd been abandoned. No, she wanted the last word. The last laugh. She wanted to spin this into her power play. But the moment her heels clicked into the driveway and she saw the garage light off, she knew. The sensor didn't trigger. Jake's truck was gone. Not just parked somewhere else. Gone. She walked into the house. It was too quiet, even for an empty one. The thermostat was set lower than usual. Cold. The living room lights were still on, dimmed like someone had left in a hurry but not in anger. Then she saw the coat rack. One of the hooks was empty. His navy jacket, the one with the frayed collar he always wore even when she begged him not to in front of guests, was missing. The hallway was the worst. There was no yelling, no slam drawers, no shattered picture frames. But the top drawer of his nightstand was open. Half of it cleared out. The watch box she gave him 5 years ago? Still there. But the drawer was missing the notepad he always kept. And the dresser. His side was stripped down to a few wire hangers. Nothing dramatic, just hollow. Like he had slipped out of the frame of their life without even disturbing the dust. She stood in the closet, barefoot, staring at the space where his boots used to sit. The same one she used to mock, saying they looked like they belonged to a man who still thinks radios need antennas. She called his phone. Straight to voicemail. No ring. No signal. No sound. She sent a text. Jake, grow up. Come home. This is ridiculous. Delivered. No read. She opened Instagram. Posted a selfie with the caption. Some men can't handle strong women. Their loss. Hashtagged it with hashtag unbothered. Hashtag Winnie over wine. But her hand shook as she typed it. Because somewhere in the back of her mind, through the fog of ego and liquor and false bravado, she started to understand. Jake didn't storm out. He didn't flinch. He didn't slam a door or make a scene. He vanished. Like a man who had spent years preparing for that exact moment. Like a man who already knew the map out and had just been waiting for the right exit sign to appear. I didn't go to my brother's. Didn't crash on some friend's couch with a garbage bag of clothes and a dumb look on my face. I didn't even take the interstate. I drove back roads, the kind lined with tired barns and rusted tractors, the kind where your thoughts aren't drowned out by traffic, just stretched thin across fields that don't ask you who you are or why you're running. I found the cabin through a guy I used to work with, back when fixing power lines meant something. It was a seasonal rental, nothing fancy, peeling paint, a wood stove that coughed instead of roared, and a dock that creaked like it held secrets. I paid cash and used a name I hadn't heard in years, Jacobel Harris. My mother's maiden name. No one knew I was there. No phone. I tossed the SIM card into the lake on the first night and watched it sink like a little coffin. No Wi-Fi. No TV. Just a transistor radio that buzzed between country and silence. And me, with a thermos of black coffee that didn't need approval. Me, waking up to birds instead of sarcastic sighs. Me, walking barefoot on creaky floorboards without being told to at least put on socks if you're going to stomp around like that. The first night, I sat on the porch and listened to the water slap gently against the shore. Not crashing, not dramatic, just consistent, like it didn't care who watched it. I opened the drawer of the nightstand. Someone had left behind a half-used yellow legal pad. I tore off a page and wrote, "If I was the problem, let's see how peaceful it is without me." I didn't write it for her. I didn't write it to vent. I wrote it like a receipt, a record of exit. See, Monica always needed to narrate the relationship. She edited my silences into guilt. She turned my patience into weakness. If I didn't fight back, she assumed I was defeated. If I didn't shout, I must be sulking. But she never understood the kind of man I was. I wasn't passive. I was quiet. There's a difference. I'm the kind of man who checks the weather 6 times before leaving the house but keeps jumper cables in the truck anyway. The kind who listens more than he speaks because most people say the most damning things when they think no one's paying attention. She wanted a fight. She wanted noise. She wanted me to play the part of the dumb, grizzled husband too fragile to walk away from the woman who outgrew him. But I didn't just leave her. I left him the man she thought I was. The slow one. The tired one. The burden. The backup plan. The fallback guy. The afterthought. I looked around that cabin. Just 4 walls, a stove, and a window that faced east, and I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I was nobody's second option. And the silence wasn't punishment. It was clarity. She thought silence was something you endured. She was about to learn. For some of us, silence is the reward. 3 days. That's how long it took before she cracked. At first, she pretended it was part of the plan. On the outside, her posts looked like victory laps, glamorous photos and soft lighting with fake deep captions like she was some kind of spiritual guru for women who mistake cruelty for confidence. Some people just can't handle honesty. She posted with a pouty mirror selfie in her walk-in closet, wearing one of the overpriced robes she used to call our little indulgences. A day later, another one. Strong women make weak men uncomfortable. Sparkles know your worth. The third day was a quote graphic, beige background, typewriter font. He'll be back. They always come back. But this one didn't have likes. No comments. Just that eerie silence when no one's buying the story anymore, and even your friends are watching quietly, wondering if they should reach out or just keep scrolling. And that's when I knew. She wasn't posting for them. She was posting for me. Every caption, every cropped shot of her wine glass and perfectly manicured nails, designed not to move on, but to bait me. Monica never understood that I wasn't watching. She thought silence was temporary. She thought I was sitting somewhere stewing, checking her page at 2 a.m., waiting for a sign, for a signal, for permission to come crawling back. She didn't understand that I never wanted the floor back. What she did notice, though, was the absence of reaction. That was the real hook in her gut. I wasn't liking the photos. I wasn't viewing the stories. I wasn't lurking. So she escalated. Day 4. A reel of her laughing with coworkers at a rooftop bar. Not the one where she humiliated me, but close enough and aesthetic to trigger a memory. The caption. Starting fresh. No dead weight. Hashtag glow up season. She looked radiant. Her hair curled perfectly, a white blazer sharp enough to cut glass. And yet, her eyes were scanning. She thought she was hunting. But all I saw was a woman trying to shoot flares into an empty sky. She started texting mutual friends. Not about me. No, Monica's smarter than that. She asked how they were doing. Dropped little hints. Have you heard from Jake? I'm just a little worried. I think he's taking this too far. But the more she reached, the more she shrank. Because my absence wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a threat. It was the end. And she had no script for that. Not for a man who didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't need to be right, just quietly slipped away and meant it. She didn't want resolution. She wanted an audience. And now, she was dancing alone. The likes slowed. The hashtags got longer. The smiles got stiffer. And the posts? They got louder. Because nothing screams desperation like a woman trying to prove she's not shaken. To a man who stopped listening days ago. I waited exactly 7 days. Not out of strategy, but because I wanted to be sure that the peace I was feeling wasn't just some temporary dopamine hit from walking out. And it wasn't. It settled deeper, like bone marrow clarity. Like exhaling from a decade-long breath I didn't know I was holding. But peace, for me, has never been passive. It doesn't mean forgiving. It means understanding. So on that 7th day, I drove 2 towns over to meet with Tom Whitaker. He's not the kind of attorney with a gold watch and a fake smile. He's a real deal, no bullshit guy with a handshake like a vice and a voice that sounds like he eats cigars for breakfast. We'd worked together when I bought a small fixer-upper rental years back. Honest. Direct. My kind of guy. He didn't ask why I was there. Just raised an eyebrow and said, "This about Monica?" I nodded. "All right," he said, sliding a legal pad toward me. "What do you need to know? Can we pull phone records? From the joint plan. Legally? Yes. Especially if it's in both names. Anything you're looking for specifically?" "Yeah," I said. "I want to know if she ever stayed at the Marriott in Buckridge more than once." His pen stopped mid-scratch. "You got a hunch, or you got something concrete?" "I've got a watch she never wore before Chicago. I've got a hotel rewards card I found in her coat pocket. And I've got silence. The kind that starts to scream when you finally listen to it." He didn't smile. Just nodded. "All right. I'll run it." 2 days later, he called me back. "Jake," he said, "you're gonna want to come in." I showed up before the coffee was cold. Tom slid a folder across the table. No ceremony. Just facts. Timestamps. Phone pings. Text records. Hotel check-ins. The name that kept popping up? Zachary F. Larson, a.k.a. Zach from work. Her minty. Her young, ambitious, funny, and totally platonic little prodigy who reminded her of herself at 25. Dozens of texts, most just numbers and emojis, like they were trying to fly under the radar. But time-stamped around 2 a.m.? 4 a.m.? One string of text showed her sending him an address and a room number. Another showed him replying with "already here," winky face. I didn't need to see the content to know what they meant. But it gets better. Monica had forgotten one crucial thing in all her PR-savvy digital hygiene. The cloud. We'd set it up together years ago, back when she still pretended my opinion mattered on things like tech and passwords. She backed up everything, photos, videos, even scanned receipts, to that shared cloud. Never bothered changing the settings. And in it? Pictures. Not raunchy. Not explicit. Just damning. Selfies from hotel rooms she never told me about. Her wearing a t-shirt that definitely wasn't hers. One video where she's laughing in a mirror, and a man's voice off camera says, "Hurry up, babe, checkout's in 20. She labeled the album conferences. She hadn't just humiliated me at that dinner. She'd been building up to it for months. Maybe years. Parading her new image, mocking mine. All while slipping off her wedding ring in hotels 30 miles from our home. She wanted me to feel small. Replaceable. She should have known better than to think I wouldn't notice the loose threads. And now? Now I had everything I needed. Not to explode. Not to rage. But to answer her little rooftop question. With precision. And finality. I didn't send a text. Didn't write some righteous email or post a long-winded, "here's my truth" monologue online like she would have. That was never my style. I sent a package. Brown envelope. No return address. Sent from a UPS store 2 towns over where no one knew my name. Inside. A single flash drive, matte black, unmarked. A neatly folded stack of divorce papers, already signed and notarized. One yellow sticky note, written in my cleanest block letters. "You told me to choose. This is my answer." That was it. No explanation. No begging. Just my final act in her drama, the one she didn't get to control. I didn't expect an immediate reaction. Thought maybe she'd post something cryptic first, maybe try to maintain that woman-in-charge narrative for her little social media theater. But I underestimated the panic of silence. The first call came at 7:42 p.m., then 7:44, then 7:48. By 9:15, she was up to 11 calls. By midnight, it hit 18. I didn't block her. I just let it ring. Over and over. No voicemail. No acknowledgement. She texted once. "Jake, we need to talk. Please. This isn't how people who spend a life together handle things." Spend a life together? Interesting language coming from someone who invested most of hers in Zach from work and hotel reward points. I knew what she was seeing now. She was watching the curtain fall, and for the first time, she wasn't the one pulling the strings. I imagined her at the kitchen island, the same one where she once told me I should be grateful to even be part of her world, clutching the papers like they were a misprint. I imagined her plugging in that flash drive, opening the file folder marked Conference Weekends, seeing her own smile reflected back at her, time-stamped and geotagged and stupid with arrogance. There was no need to narrate anything. I let her face it exactly the way she left me to face that rooftop, publicly, with no script. I turned off the phone and placed it in the drawer. She wanted control. She wanted power. She wanted an answer, loud enough for everyone to hear. So I gave her one, quiet, precise, and impossible to walk back. You don't slam a door when you're done. You close it gently and lock it from the other side. Monica always believed silence was weakness, that the absence of a rebuttal meant victory, that a man who didn't scream was a man still processing, still digesting, still stuck somewhere in the soft belly of heartbreak. She never understood that some men don't shout. Some men just execute. Zach was the first to go. The moment my name was stripped from her accounts, the Amex, the insurance, the little monthly wellness stipend I used to funnel into her favorite skincare site, he evaporated. One week she was tagging him in wine bar selfies. The next, blocked. Vanished from her feed, from her phone, from the backseat of her very curated life. He didn't even ghost her the old-fashioned way. He just let her find out the hard way, through a bounced iMessage and a user not found notification on Instagram. Why? Because Zach never cared about Monica. He cared about the lifestyle. And the lifestyle? It was paid for by a man she thought was disposable. But when I disappeared, so did the cushion. No more surprise spa days. No more paid getaways under the guise of regional PR training. No more midweek steakhouse dinners where she pretended she was mentoring him. And then came the job. Monica worked at a boutique PR firm, heavy on luxury clients and image management. The kind of place where perception was currency and whispers had teeth. One anonymous email hit the inbox of her department head. No subject line, no signature, just a link to a shared folder. Inside, photos of Monica in a hotel room, a video clip with a man's voice whispering her name, screenshots of her text to Zach, complete with timestamps during office hours. The title of the folder? Conference Materials. No accusations, no commentary, just evidence. That's all it took. Her boss didn't even confront her directly. She just started getting cut out of meetings. One client reassignment, then two. Then HR sent a calendar invite for a follow-up conversation regarding professional boundaries. PR is a savage industry. Nobody gets fired publicly. They just disappear from the company Slack. Her colleagues stopped commenting on her posts. The office manager accidentally forgot to include her on the invite list for the fall launch party. One junior rep she used to bully in meetings suddenly had access to an account Monica spent 2 years nurturing. Internally, they didn't say much. But everyone knew. Someone had poisoned the well. And all of it, every ounce of collapse, happened in silence. No threats. No revenge speeches. Just quiet pressure applied exactly where it would hurt. She used to say I didn't know how to win an argument. And maybe she was right. Because I never wanted to win an argument. I wanted to end the war. And the best way to end it is to make sure the enemy never even hears the shot. She must have gotten the address from my brother. Or maybe from the return label I slipped up and left on the divorce envelope. Doesn't matter. What matters is that she showed up, pulled into the gravel drive like it was still her right. In that same pearl-white SUV I paid for. Stepped out like she was still the star of the scene, wrapped in her tailored coat and desperation disguised as poise. The knock came sharp at first, knuckles hitting with like a manager checking in on an underperforming employee. I didn't move. She knocked again, louder. Then came the voice. Jake, come on. I just want to talk. I poured hot water over fresh grounds. Let the smell fill the room. No rush. She wasn't going anywhere. Please. A pause. I didn't mean what I said. You know I was just upset. That dinner, it got out of hand. The desperation was creeping in now. Less polished. More feral. You're the only real thing I've had in years, Jake. You know that, right? No more plural pronouns. No more power games. I heard her pacing on the porch, boots crunching against old pine needles. Jake, she said again, this time softer. Zach was nothing. You and I have history. We built things. We can fix this. That word. Fix. The same word she used every time she broke something and didn't want to admit she'd shattered it on purpose. She knocked again, weaker this time. Then silence. Then the thud of her back against the doorframe as she sat. I sat too. Across the cabin, facing the window, coffee in hand, watching the orange blush of dawn spread over the lake like a secret the world was too tired to keep. She cried. I heard it. Real tears. But that's the thing about real tears. They don't always mean real change. So I let her cry. Let her say everything she needed to say to that old oak door. She begged. Whispered memories through the cracks in the frame. Said the good years had to mean something. Said she made a mistake. Said I could hurt her back if that's what I needed. Just don't leave her in silence. But silence is all I had left that was mine. So I sat. And she sat. And the sun came up slow and indifferent, spilling gold over her designer boots and tear-streaked makeup. And I drank my coffee. Warm. Black. Unapologetically bitter. She stayed on that porch for an hour. Maybe more. But I never opened the door. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I finally understood that forgiveness is not an invitation to re-enter. Sometimes, it's just you, alone in a cabin with peace and the resolve to not repeat the past, no matter who comes knocking. It came late, past midnight. The kind of hour where regret festers and clarity becomes a razor instead of a bomb. She sent it through an old email account I'd forgotten we shared back in the days when we still meant something more than legal entanglement and shared bills. Subject line, please. No greeting. No fluff. Just the raw, cracked voice of someone who had finally run out of spin. I was stupid. You were the best thing in my life. I just wanted you to fight for me. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I stared at it. Read it twice. Once as the man who'd once tried everything to keep us from unraveling. And once as the man I'd become, the one who finally understood that fighting for someone who treats your loyalty like a leash isn't romance. It's self-immolation. Her message wasn't really an apology. It was a confession wrapped in nostalgia. She wasn't sorry she'd done it. She was sorry I'd called her bluff. Sorry I didn't perform the heartbreak she expected. She wanted fire. I gave her ice. So I opened my old photo archive, the same cloud she forgot I still had access to, and scrolled. Not through the hotel pictures. Not through the evidence. Through that night. The rooftop. The moment. Someone at the table had taken a photo, probably redhead PR Barbie, right after Monica raised her glass. There she was. Frozen in time. Smug, glowing, arm extended in a mock toast, that performative smirk on her face like she was in the middle of a power move. I attached the photo to my reply. Typed one sentence. You asked me to choose. Now you're just living with the answer. I hit send. Didn't wait for a reply. Didn't need to. Because that photo? It wasn't a memory anymore. It was a mirror. And she could stare into it as long as she wanted. But it would always show the same thing. A woman who mistook cruelty for strength. And a man who finally knew that silence doesn't mean surrender. It means he's gone. It was a Saturday. Early fall. The kind of crisp that makes you consider switching from hot coffee to bourbon by 10 a.m. I was sitting on the back porch of the cabin, the lake flat and silver like a polished coin, when my phone lit up. It was a message from Caleb, an old mutual friend, one of the few who hadn't chosen sides when everything burned down. His texts were always short, polite, and just awkward enough to make it clear he didn't like being the middleman. Hey man, big party next weekend, Kim's birthday. Just a backyard thing. Monica might be there. Thought you should know. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then a second message came. She's not the same anymore. Just saying. She cries every time your name comes up. And there it was, the setup. The olive branch. The unspoken idea that maybe time softened things. Maybe this was the part where I show up. We make weird eye contact across the fire pit, and a redemption arc writes itself. She always was theatrical. I took a sip of my coffee. Dark roast, black, strong enough to punch back. The wind rolled across the lake in little ripples, and I listened to the leaves shift like whispers. I let it all sit for a beat before I replied. I hope she finally understands that silence was my loudest goodbye. Then I typed another message. Short. Final. Tell Kim happy birthday for me. I won't make it. Because I wasn't walking into some teary reconciliation scene designed to redeem the villain in the third act. I wasn't her closure. I wasn't her confession booth. She made me choose. Publicly. Loudly. With the kind of grin that doesn't belong to someone in love, but to someone winning a bet. And I answered. Not with yelling. Not with begging. I answered by leaving. And the thing about real choices? The good ones? They don't have sequels. So let her cry. Let her spin her stories to anyone still willing to listen. She didn't lose me when she cheated. She didn't lose me when she raised that glass. She lost me when she believed I wouldn't walk away. That I'd stay out of habit, out of guilt, out of fear. But I walked. I left the man she thought I was. And now, months later, as she sits somewhere rehearsing apologies to the echo of my name, I sit with my coffee, the lake, and a silence she'll never be invited into again. Because she once demanded I choose. And I did. Forever. You know, my ex knew how to live. You just work. That line didn't just float into the air. It slammed into Owen like a slow, cold knife. He didn't flinch. Not because it didn't hurt, but because pain like that only confirms what you already suspect. The decay wasn't creeping anymore. It was roaring. Across the table, Marissa held her wine glass like a trophy, eyes glazed with just enough Chardonnay and contempt. She'd said it casually, like she was reviewing a bland salad. Not a marriage. Owen didn't answer. He didn't even blink. He just looked at her, really looked, at the woman he'd shared a mortgage, a bed, a future with, and realized she wasn't trying to hurt him. She didn't think there was anything left to hurt. She smirked at his silence, smug like she'd won some unspoken contest. God. It's like you forgot how to live. My ex would have taken me to Rome on a Tuesday just because he missed my smile. Owen stood. No sigh, no eye roll, just the slow, deliberate movement of a man gathering plates. He carried them to the sink, turned on the tap, and said with surgical calm, "Book yourself a break." On me. That stunned her for half a second. She blinked. Maybe she expected a fight. Maybe a sulk. But not that. Not generosity. "You're serious?" she asked, cocking her head. "Absolutely." Owen said, back still turned, water running over his hands like he was baptizing himself into something new. Full reset. "You deserve it." She didn't question it. Of course she didn't. A woman like Marissa only questions what threatens her. This didn't. This felt like validation. Like winning. By the time she poured her third glass, she was already texting her friend Laura. "He just offered me a spa trip. Out of nowhere. Is this guilt? LOL. Then another. I swear, sometimes it's like I'm married to a spreadsheet in khakis. Listen, quick break. We set a goal to hit 10K subscribers. So tap subscribe if you're liking these wild stories of betrayal. Now let's get back to the madness. In their bedroom, Owen quietly opened his desk drawer. Not the one with pins and junk mail. The locked one. The one he hadn't touched in years. Inside, a folded document with signatures, draft paperwork, trust templates, a USB stick. He hadn't been preparing for this moment, but he'd been imagining it. At 2:47 a.m., while she snored beside him with a half-charged phone still buzzing beside her, Owen sat in the den drafting emails. Nothing dramatic. No furious subject lines. Just confirming readiness for transfer. Please expedite the remaining legal filters by Q2. Client authorization granted. Proceed as discussed. By 3:15 a.m., he'd paid for her Freedom Weekend. 5 nights. Ocean view. Private suite. Full spa access. Room service included. The works. By 3:18 a.m., he'd also scheduled a meeting with his counsel to finalize a transaction. A transaction that would quietly shift ownership of a particular holding company to a new trust with a new name and a very specific intent. By 3:20 a.m., he took a deep breath. The kind you take when you stop loving someone who kept daring you to act. The kind you take when the game's already over, but no one's told the other player yet. Meanwhile, in the other room, Marissa stirred, mumbled something about dream lagging in Italy. He listened, just for a moment. Not with love, not with pity, with clarity. Because in 31 years of marriage, Owen had built a career, a name, and a portfolio. But he'd also been building something far more dangerous, a reputation for stillness. Everyone thought that meant passive. But Marissa was about to learn what happens when a quiet man moves with purpose. And she wouldn't like where that movement began. The envelope was glossy. Too glossy, honestly, like the kind of mail that screams PR stunt or generic apology. Marissa flipped it over with one hand while stirring her oat milk latte with the other. No card. Just a reservation confirmation and a polished brochure with stock photos of glowing women in silk robes pretending to find peace. She laughed, out loud, alone at the counter. Not because it was sweet, but because it was so Owen. 5 nights. Solo suite. Signature serenity package. Jesus, he really thinks aromatherapy can fix a personality, she muttered, snapping a picture of the voucher and firing it into the group chat titled, Wine Night Bitches. He got me a spa trip, loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. He thinks a massage will fix him being a snooze skull. Honestly, might be the most Owen thing he's ever done. Better than another clock radio or rice cooker face with ears of joy. Marissa dropped the envelope on the counter like it offended her. But she kept the voucher. Of course she did. She even pulled up the spa's website and started daydreaming. The place looked like a coastal monastery crossed with a Bond villain's vacation home. And the fact that he paid? Even better. If she was going to feel nothing for this man, she might as well enjoy the perks. Meanwhile, across town, Owen stood beneath a buzzing fluorescent light at the county clerk's office, calmly initialing a transfer packet with the poise of a surgeon. No tuxedoed villainy. Just a man wearing loafers, a pressed button down, and a face like someone folding a flag. The transaction had been in motion for 2 months. A holding company with a forgettable name. A silent partner from his college days. A chain of small investments that quietly acquired controlling shares in 3 hospitality assets, including the Seawind Retreat, a boutique spa in Marissa's top 3 saved wishlist locations. He clicked the final checkbox on the digital signature pad and accepted the stamped confirmation across the counter. The clerk smiled politely, unaware of what was unfolding. Owen reached into his jacket, pulled out an old pin, navy blue, slightly worn around the gold trim. Marissa had given it to him for their 20th anniversary. Engraved, to the man who never stops. He clicked it. No hesitation. Signed the final ownership form with a slow, steady hand. The ink glided perfectly. He whispered, not to the clerk, not even to himself, just into the room. This time, you'll get to really relax. He didn't smirk. He didn't fantasize about confrontation or vengeance. This wasn't a tantrum. This was arithmetic. Precision. Physics, even. Across town, Marissa poured herself a second mimosa and posted a boomerang of her voucher on Instagram. Caption. He finally bought me something useful, woman in steam room sparkles #spoiled. Her followers loved it. Heart emojis. Fire emojis. A few, you deserve it, comments from women who'd flirted with Owen at barbecues for years but never got a text back. Marissa had no idea that the coordinates on her confirmation email pointed to a property that now reported to an LLC controlled by Owen's trust. That the room reserved under her name was already flagged in the system. That the front desk staff had received a new protocol memo that morning, just one name on the do not admit list. She had no idea that this wasn't a gift. It was a key. And the door she was walking toward wasn't a retreat. It was an exit. From everything. And Owen? He had one more stop to make before lunch. A quiet meeting with a private estate attorney. The kind of man who doesn't ask why your name isn't on the deed, only how fast you want the ink to dry. The airport selfie was classic Marissa. Sunglasses too big, lips too glossy, and just enough cleavage to remind her viewers she still had it. She tilted her head, softened the light with a filter, and added the caption with practiced cruelty. Off to unwind. Husband paid. Life's good. Winking face airplane, nail polish medium light skin tone, #no regrets. She sent it to 3 people. Her friend Laura, her yoga instructor/sometimes confidant, and one more contact. The one saved as no regrets. She had no clue that the last number, area code 404, labeled in her phone with a black heart emoji, wasn't a fling. Wasn't even a man. Not anymore. That number belonged to a man named Cal. Yes, but not the one she thought she was texting. That Cal had stopped replying after she ghosted him during a spa trip in Palm Springs 2 years ago. Owen had quietly taken the liberty of porting the number last fall, months after she left her iPad unlocked, and a string of cryptic messages caught his eye. Cal, the man she thought she was texting, had once called her complicated. Cal, the current owner of the number, called her Client 06. And that selfie? Within minutes, it was in a secure folder alongside dozens of others. Categorized, time-stamped, geolocated. In another city, in a dim office above a silent strip mall, Owen sat across from Cal, flipping through a thick, black dossier. Not one photo. 14. All from the last 6 months. Spa selfies, wine tastings, poolside leg shots where the reflection in her sunglasses betrayed more than just sunshine. She never even checked the metadata, Cal muttered, thumbing through a printout. You could triangulate half her habits with these. Owen didn't react. He simply tapped the last page. A bank withdrawal dated 2 months ago, synced to a dinner bill at a rooftop restaurant that he never got invited to. She's predictable, Cal added. Ego always breaks routine. Eventually, Owen slid the folder shut. She's not the problem, he said quietly. She's the decoy. Marissa, meanwhile, was sipping overpriced airport rose in the lounge, updating her story with another clip. Her heels, her luggage, her hand tossing a scarf into her weekender bag like some kind of low-budget travel influencer. Needed this. So, bad. A man 2 seats over complimented her nails. She laughed, too loudly. Said, my husband treats me like a pet project, his money finally doing something right. The words dripped off her tongue like wine off granite. Cold, casual, unaware. At gate 28B, she leaned back, legs crossed, scrolling through likes and replies from women just like her, restless, decorative, bored with men who paid but never danced. She had no idea the freedom weekend she mocked had been curated to precision. Each minute, each room, each step of her experience owned. The flight boarded. She reclined into 3A with the smugness of someone who thinks the game is hers because the scoreboard hasn't changed yet. By the time she landed, the system had already pinged her arrival. The car service had her name. The valet knew the plate. The receptionist had the folder in her drawer. But Marissa? Marissa still thought she was a winner. Still laughing. Still in control. Still texting no regrets. What she didn't know, what she would only discover later, in that crushing moment when the spa turned cold and the smiles froze, was that every text she'd sent to that number had been read. Not just read. Filed. Not just filed. Prepared. Because in this story, Marissa wouldn't get the last laugh. She'd get the last look. The kind that makes your blood go still. And Owen wouldn't even be there when it happened. He didn't need to be. That's the thing about precision. It doesn't require an audience. 36 minutes after Marissa's flight took off, Owen's fingers hovered above the keyboard in his home office, the one she'd once dismissed as his bunker. The room wasn't large, but everything in it had a purpose. Filing cabinets labeled with surgical precision, a clock that didn't tick, and a single photo of his late father on the shelf above the desk, wearing the same strained half-smile Owen now wore. He began with her secondary credit card, the one she used for personal freedom, i.e., overpriced brunches, skincare subscriptions, and that one impulsive furniture splurge she claimed was a deal too good to miss. Click. Cancelled. The last charge? A pre-check spa kit from a boutique she once mocked for being too boho. Fitting. Next, joint account lockout. He'd already warned the bank manager 2 days earlier, speaking in that clipped tone of voice that lawyers and doctors recognize, the tone of a man who knows exactly what he's doing. The shared funds, 6 digits, well within reach for someone like Owen, transferred in 3 clean chunks into a revocable living trust. Beneficiary name, Jane C. Holloway. His sister, retired Air Force. Never liked Marissa. Still kept their wedding photo flipped face down on the family piano. Owen paused, sipped from a lukewarm mug of coffee, then opened a second window and updated the primary beneficiary clauses on his life insurance, his brokerage account, and the vacation property in Vermont. Gone was Marissa's name, replaced with trust custodial assignment pending. She joked once that she could never remember all his assets, like it was some endearing flaw, like his diligence was exhausting. Now she wouldn't need to remember. She wouldn't even see them again. The final move was simple but devastating. Disabling her profile on their financial dashboard. No more access to statements. No alerts. No visibility. Gone was her view of the empire she took for granted. At 12:14 p.m., her plane still gliding somewhere over the Great Lakes, he tapped a key and encrypted the transaction log. Then archived it on a USB drive tucked into his safe behind a framed landscape painting. The painting? A gift from Marissa's mother. Irony wasn't lost on him. He stood. Let the silence breathe. The walls of the office felt different now, not like a bunker, but like a war room after the last move had been made. In the kitchen, he ignored his phone. A text buzzed in from Laura. She's so excited for this trip. You're seriously husband of the year. Clinking glasses. He smiled without warmth. He'd been husband of the year for too long. He was aiming for something else now. Ghost with perfect timing. As her plane dipped into descent, Marissa closed her eyes, thinking about eucalyptus steam rooms and smugly posting one last story. Owen booked me a whole week of silence. Let's see if I survive. Smirking face. By the time her heels clicked into the luxury car waiting at the arrivals lane, every card she carried, every backup, every safety net, was as useful as confetti in a flood. She was about to walk into a temple that no longer took her name. And Owen? He wasn't angry. He was done. And when a man like that is done, he doesn't slam the door. He quietly rewires the locks and removes your key. The drive up the coast was as perfect as she imagined, sunlight splashing off the hood of the Tesla, curated playlist humming softly, her sunglasses catching just enough glare to make her feel like the star of some midlife rom-com. The spa sat atop a cliffside like a cathedral to indulgence, cedar-paneled walls, frosted glass windows, ivy curling around stone columns. It practically begged to be photographed. Marissa pulled up with the confidence of a woman who believed the world owed her softness. This, she whispered to herself, checking her lipstick in the rearview mirror, is what he should have done years ago. The valet stepped up, polite, crisp uniform, the whole performance. She handed him the keys with a smirk. Take good care of her. She's moody if you brake too hard. The lobby smelled like citrus and secrets. Soft jazz floated from hidden speakers. Reception sat behind a pale marble desk, all muted tones and serene smiles. Welcome to Seawind, the woman said, folding her hands. Name, please. Marissa Calloway. Her voice was casual, expectant, like royalty checking into her seasonal estate. The receptionist's fingers paused mid-keystroke. Her face didn't change, just the faintest flicker in her eyes. She glanced once at the screen, then at Marissa. May I see your ID? Marissa laughed lightly. Sure. I know I look too young for a reservation. The joke didn't land. The receptionist didn't blink. She took the ID, looked at it, then quietly pressed a small button beneath the desk. Just a moment, she said, too evenly. Marissa frowned. Is there a problem? No, ma'am. Just standard verification. The elevator behind the reception pinged. 2 security personnel stepped out. Not rushed, not aggressive, but unmistakably present. The taller one, clipboard in hand, approached with the calmness of someone who'd rehearsed this exact moment. Marissa Calloway? Yes. Her voice had a sharp edge now. He handed her a manila folder. Thin, deliberate, labeled in bold, block font. Trespass notice. She blinked. Excuse me. The guard didn't flinch. Per property rights held by OD management, your presence is no longer permitted on site. OD what? He flipped the next page without ceremony. There it was, the deed transfer. The logo she'd never seen before but would never forget. OD Management Group LLC. Primary stakeholder, O&D, Calloway. Marissa laughed. Loud. Disbelieving. Wait. Owen owns this place? No, that's not possible. He doesn't even like spas. He thinks cucumbers belong in salads. The receptionist stepped out from behind the desk, voice calm, like a librarian explaining a late fee. You don't have to understand, ma'am. Marissa's hand gripped the folder. This is a mistake. I have a voucher. Look. She pulled out the envelope like it was a golden ticket, waving it in the air. The receptionist nodded. That voucher is valid. For another guest. Not for you. But I booked it in my name. The shorter guard tapped the notice. Which is how we knew when you'd show up. The valet returned, holding her keys. Your vehicle is waiting. Marissa stood frozen, the scent of lemon oil suddenly nauseating. I don't understand. The receptionist met her eyes, just once. You don't have to. A pause. Then, with a half smile, he does. The guards didn't touch her. They didn't need to. Shame did the heavy lifting. Marissa walked out the same way she came in, heels clicking too loud, face pale beneath designer sunglasses, folder clutched like a subpoena. She got into the car, closed the door, and for the first time in years, said nothing. In the rearview mirror, the spa shimmered like a mirage, a paradise she had been this close to entering. And just like that, gone. She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But she knew who. And that knowing would gnaw at her more than any locked door ever could. The first call came before Owen even finished his walk with the dog. He glanced down at the screen. Marissa, mobile. Decline. The second one, unknown number. Decline. By the time he was back in his study, towel over his shoulder, coffee brewing in the kitchen, the buzzing had become almost musical, like some twisted ringtone of panic, fear, confusion. Voicemail transcriptions were already stacking. Owen, what the hell is going on? I'm at the spa and they threw me out? Are you serious right now? Call me back. I mean it. This isn't funny. You're acting insane. Did you buy the spa? Is this some kind of punishment? Grow the hell up. By the fourth message, her tone cracked. Please. I don't get it. I just want a time away. Just talk to me, okay? Don't do this like some stranger. A fifth pinged in. Then a sixth, voice shaking. I don't even know where to go now. I don't have the card. I couldn't even buy gas at the station. What the hell did you do? Owen sat at his desk, flipping through the morning paper like nothing was happening. Every now and then, the screen would light up. He'd pause, glance, silence, flip the page. He didn't open the texts. He didn't need to. The titles were enough. Answer me. You're scaring me. You can't just erase me. Please. Just please. He took another sip of his coffee. Black. No sugar. The way he used to drink it before he met Marissa, who insisted sweetness made things easier to swallow. He opened his laptop, logged into the Smart Life console, the app Marissa loved, mostly because it gave her remote control of their entire house, lighting presets, thermostat routines, music playlists. She once used it to dim the lights during one of their arguments, said it helped mood regulate his tone. He never forgot that. Now, he scrolled down to user access and hovered over the entry labeled Marissa, admin. He clicked edit, then revoke. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to disable this user's access to all linked devices? He stared at it for a beat, then clicked yes. It wasn't revenge. It was peace. And peace, he'd learned, often sounded like nothing. The house was quiet. No more buzzing. Just the ticking of the antique wall clock and the soft whir of the espresso machine powering down. Somewhere, maybe in a gas station parking lot, or maybe sitting on her sister's couch, Marissa's phone refreshed the Smart Life app. Your credentials are invalid. Please contact account administrator. She would try again. Maybe think it was a glitch. Then she'd realize it wasn't. She'd try to turn on music in the bedroom, change the lights, access the cameras. She'd find nothing. No control. No entry. Not even a thermostat command. It would hit her not like a slap, but like a subtle, creeping cold. The home she curated with scented candles and wine fridge upgrades no longer responded to her, because she didn't live there anymore. Not really. And Owen? He stepped out to the backyard, coffee in hand, watching the sky warm into blue. The grass was damp. The world, still. The phone buzzed one last time on the desk. He didn't check it. Instead, he walked back inside, placed the phone gently in a drawer, and shut it like sealing a letter you'll never read again. Let her scream into the void. Let her beg. Let her threaten. But let it be known. The void doesn't echo when the door's already closed. The knock at the door came just after noon, cutting through the shrill clatter of Marissa arguing with her sister in the kitchen. No, I'm telling you, he's lost it, Dana. He bought a whole damn spa just to humiliate me. He canceled my cards. He shut off my access to the house, my own house. And I can't get into anything, not the bank, not even the stupid app that turns on the damn lights. Dana, who'd been nursing a lukewarm cup of tea and a growing headache, finally snapped. Then maybe you should have treated the man like a husband instead of a Wi-Fi signal with a wallet. Before Marissa could launch into her next tirade, the doorbell rang. Dana raised a brow. Did you order something else on your mystery tab? They opened the door to find a uniformed courier holding a black, flat case, not the kind of package that screams Amazon impulse buy. The man offered a faint, practiced smile. Delivery for Marissa Calloway. Signature required. She signed without thinking, adrenaline still buzzing. What is it? The courier didn't answer. Just turned and walked away, already typing something into his tablet. Marissa shut the door and carried the case to the coffee table. Dana crossed her arms. Please tell me that's not from him. Marissa popped the latches open. Inside was a thick envelope stamped confidential, legal delivery. No sender name, just initials, ODC. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the contents. The first page was dry and clinical. Notice of termination, power of attorney. Effective immediately, she no longer had legal authority over any of Owen's decisions, assets, or affairs. The second. Ownership certificate, Seawind Retreat Spa and Wellness. 100% ownership listed under OD Management Group LLC. All signatories verified, notarized, complete. Next, a crisp, printed screenshot. She blinked. It was her selfie. From the airport. Sent to the number saved as no regrets. The one with the caption, off to unwind. Husband paid. Life's good. Underneath it, a tiny line of metadata. Recovered from monitored device access log. Dana gasped behind her. He was watching you? Marissa stared at it. Like if she glared hard enough, the pixels would rearrange into something less damning. Less real. At the bottom of the stack sat a single white card. Heavy stock. Embossed lettering. No signature. Just one sentence, centered. You wanted freedom. You got it. And I finally got peace. She didn't speak. Not for a full minute. Dana, slowly, like she was speaking to a patient post-concussion, whispered, He's done, Marissa. But Marissa didn't hear her. She was busy rereading the note. Again and again. The words didn't change. The impact only deepened. For the first time since the spa doors closed in her face, since the credit cards declined, since her name disappeared from every system she once ruled with a smirk, she felt it. Not confusion. Not fury. Loss. Because it wasn't just a package. It was a seal. A carefully wrapped truth she could never shove back in the envelope. Owen hadn't yelled. He hadn't thrown things. He hadn't even argued. He had simply exited. With precision. With patience. And now? She was left holding the ashes of a kingdom she thought she owned, built on a throne she never realized someone else could pull out from under her. No regrets? She didn't even have access to regrets anymore. Only consequences. She messaged first with a single word. Please. Then a longer one. Just meet me. One coffee. One explanation. I deserve that. Owen didn't answer right away. He waited until the next morning, let the silence finish speaking, then typed. Ferry Street Cafe. 10 a.m. Wednesday. 1 hour. Marissa showed up at 9:43, makeup flawless, hair curled with the kind of effort that screams control. She'd picked a soft beige coat and the necklace he bought her on their 10th anniversary, something familiar, something calculated. The hostess pointed her to a corner table, and her heart sank. He was already there, dressed in dark navy. Reading. Calm. Too calm. She approached like someone preparing for both a hug and a lawsuit. You look thinner, she said, as if that were a peace offering. Owen closed the book. No smile. Just a long, unreadable look. Stress can be a good motivator. She sat. A beat of silence. I don't understand, she started. I know. This isn't you. He tilted his head. No. This is the me you never thought I'd become. He reached down, opened his briefcase, and slid a thin folder across the table. She hesitated. What is this? She asked, already dreading the answer. Everything you didn't care about when you were busy comparing me to your ex, he said evenly. Everything I kept track of when you thought I was too boring to notice. She opened the folder. The first page, a spreadsheet of bank activity, highlighting every solo withdrawal she'd made under the guise of home needs. Timestamps. Locations. Items. The second, a log of calendar syncs, days he was supposed to be out of town, that mysteriously lined up with her hotel charges. The third, GPS history from her car's tracker. She didn't even know it had one. He hadn't installed it out of suspicion. It came factory installed. He just stopped ignoring it. Her hands shook slightly. Why didn't you ever say anything? Owen leaned back, finished his coffee. Because I thought I was the problem, he said. For a long time. I thought working hard made me unlovable. That being responsible made me small. She started to speak. He raised a hand. No. You had your say. You performed your indifference with Olympic-level grace. I was just the dependable man with the mortgage and a good pension. The background character in your show. He tapped the folder. This was me paying attention. Her jaw tightened. I never wanted it to get ugly. It's not ugly, he replied. Ugly would be yelling. Drama. Dragging this through lawyers and mud. This. He gestured calmly. This is surgical. She stared at the papers. I didn't cheat. No, he agreed. You didn't sleep with anyone, yet. But you stopped choosing me years ago. And you know what that makes me? She stayed silent. A prop. A reliable prop. Until I wasn't. Marissa swallowed hard. You said I could take Spacey. You asked for freedom, he interrupted. And I gave you exactly that. You're unbound, untied, and unreachable. She exhaled, long and slow, eyes shimmering. I thought you didn't know how to live. Owen stood, slid his jacket over his arm, and looked down at her, tired, brittle, wearing all the right things for all the wrong reasons. No, he said quietly. I didn't know how to leave. Then he turned and walked out, past the barista, past the glass windows, past the version of himself that once begged for her attention with birthday dinners and anniversary speeches. Marissa sat alone at the table, a pile of printed truth in front of her, coffee untouched, silence roaring. And for the first time in 4 days, her phone didn't buzz. Not once. Not even from no regrets. It hit her inbox at 2:13 a.m., the hour when silence has weight and regret has claws. The subject line was short, weakened memories, with no sender name she recognized. No message body, just a file attachment, final.mp4. Marissa stared at it for a full minute before opening it, heart thudding like a metronome speeding up with every passing second. She was curled on Dana's pull-out sofa, makeup still smudged from earlier tears she hadn't meant to shed. The TV was on mute, playing some show she wasn't watching. Her phone had been quiet for hours. The video opened to grainy, wide-angle footage. Black and white. No sound. A surveillance feed, time-stamped. Seawin Spa, reception lobby. She blinked. There she was, entering with her signature bounce, heels clipping confidently across the marble. She paused at the desk, flashing her ID, lips moving with smug amusement. Then the receptionist's pause. The subtle press of a button. The guards entering frame. Marissa's posture changed in real time. First confusion, then indignation, then something closer to disbelief. Her hands gestured, erratic and sharp. She pointed at the desk, at the voucher. The receptionist didn't flinch. She watched herself unravel. Not with grace. With entitlement. At the 2 minutes and 36 seconds mark, the guard handed her the folder. She didn't open it immediately in the footage, just stood there, staring like someone watching their world tilt sideways. The moment replayed like a ghost mocking her from behind glass. There was no soundtrack, no excuses, just the cold, unfiltered truth of her performance. Then the video cut. Black screen. A single still frame faded in. The trespass notice. Zoomed in. Crystal clear. Marissa Calloway, printed in bold at the top. Owner's signature. Owen D. Calloway, centered at the bottom. Underneath, typed in sharp white font. Now you know how it feels to be locked out. She paused it there. Let it sit. Let it breathe. Because no one was yelling. No one was calling her names. No one was breaking things or making threats. Just this. Her humiliation, repackaged in clean resolution. A mirror held up to her in silence. She didn't realize her hand was shaking until the phone slipped slightly from her grasp and the edge of it pressed into her thigh. She pressed replay, watched it again, this time slower, trying to see what he saw, trying to find the moment she became someone he would lock out. Was it the smirk? The flippant gestures? The way she stormed out with her jaw tight and her spine brittle? Or maybe it was before the camera ever rolled. Maybe it was the years before, the little dismissals, the sharpened sarcasm, The way she chipped away at the man she thought would never leave. And now? He had. Not with a bang, but with record-keeping. With legal signatures. With precision. She tried to call him once more. It didn't even ring. Just went straight to voicemail. This user is not available. Not answering. Not available. The spa footage played again in the background, now on loop. Her pacing, her spiraling, her disbelief playing like a private screening she never bought a ticket for. And suddenly, she understood something about Owen she never really grasped. He didn't just walk away. He archived her. Permanently. The glass doors of the firm gleamed like judgment. Marissa stood in front of them in a blazer she hadn't worn since Owen's last office gala, back when she was still invited, still relevant. Her hair was done. Her heels were sharp. She looked every inch the part of a woman in control. Except her eyes betrayed her. The receptionist barely looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm his wife," she snapped. "Tell him Marissa's here. I want to talk. Now." The woman blinked. "I'll let him know." She didn't move. Just pressed a single key, then lowered her gaze like nothing had happened. The seconds stretched like years. Marissa clenched her fists. "This is ridiculous. I deserve a conversation." From the corner of her eye, a flash of motion. The glass conference room door opened. Owen stepped into view. She hated how calm he looked. Like he'd just closed a deal. Like she didn't weigh a single ounce in his world anymore. He walked toward her without urgency. No expression. No hesitation. Then, without a word, he held out an envelope. She didn't take it right away. Her voice trembled as she asked, "What is this?" He didn't answer. Just extended it closer. She snatched it like it offended her fingers. Tore it open. Inside, a clean, crisp stack of legal papers. Divorce terms. Notarized. Final. Signed. Her breath hitched. "You're not even going to talk to me?" Owen leaned in slightly, not intimate, not threatening. Just close enough for her to hear him over the hum of the lobby. "You said your ex knew how to live," he said softly. "That's why you'll need him now." He stepped back. "Because you don't exist in my world anymore." She blinked, stunned, mouth slightly open. "You can't just erase me." "I didn't erase you," he replied, eyes clear. "I archived you." Then he turned, walked through the security gate, past the chrome elevator, through the glass doors that locked behind him with a hiss. She stood there holding the envelope like it was radioactive. The receptionist glanced up once, almost kindly. "Would you like validation for parking?" Marissa didn't answer. Because there wasn't a valet in the world that could validate what she just lost. The man she mocked, underestimated, used as a wallet and a backdrop, he hadn't just left her. He deleted her. Without screaming. Without spectacle. Just gone. And this time? There was no regrets to text. Only silence. And locked doors.